For the record, my name is Brian Worrell, District 4 City Councilor, and I am the Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today is April 15, 2025. It is 10:12 a.m. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. The Council's budget review process will encompass a series of public hearings beginning in April and running through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record. You can do this in several ways. 1, attend one of our hearings and give public testimony. We will take public testimony at the end of each departmental hearing and also at 2 hearings dedicated to public testimony. The full hearing schedule is on our website at boston.gov/council-budget. Our scheduled hearings dedicated to public testimony are virtual on Tuesday, April 22nd at 6 p.m. and in person on Thursday, May 28th at 6 p.m. You can give testimony in person, here in the chamber, or virtually via Zoom. For in-person testimony, please come to the chamber and sign up on the sheet near the entrance. It will be taken at the beginning of this hearing following the panelist presentation. Individuals will be called on in order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. For virtual testimony, you can sign up using our online form on our Council Budget Review website or by emailing the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov or by emailing Karishma Chauhan at boston.gov. That is KARISHMA.CHOUHAN@boston.gov. You will receive the Zoom link and your name will be added to the list. When you are called to testify, please state your name and affiliation or residence and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. Number 2, you can email your written testimony to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. Or number 3, submit a 2-minute video of your testimony through the form on our website. For more information on the City Council budget process and how to testify, please visit the City Council's budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on docket number 0822 through 0830 and 0831 through 0832. The FY26 budget for Boston Public Schools. This hearing will cover BPS mergers and closures, facilities, hub schools, transportation, new arrivals, unhoused students, BPS Facilities Revolving Fund, and the BPS Transportation Revolving Fund. This is the third of a series of hearings to review the FY26 budget. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the committee on April 9th, 2025. Today I'm joined by my colleague, Councilor Braden, and now turn it over to the panel to introduce themselves and for their presentation.
Wonderful. Good morning, Councilor Worrell, and to the city councilors. Thank you for having us back for the 3rd and 4th FY26 Boston Public Schools budget hearings. We look forward to an informative discussion this morning and this afternoon following yesterday's productive dialogue. Again, I want to thank the City Council for establishing open lines of communication regarding this year's budget. We are appreciative of the opportunities you provided last fall's hearing and last month's working session, because it's really allowed us to lay the groundwork for where we are today. You've seen many of the issues that you care about reflected in this budget so far. We hope today's hearings will provide you with any additional clarity you need. As I've said before, our spending plan honors our commitment to putting students first while maximizing our previous investments and strengthening proven programs and initiatives. We've accomplished this through strong fiscal stewardship by both BPS and Mayor Wu's team, as well as fiscally responsible investments and strategic reductions in efficiencies. Working with the mayor and her team, we created a budget that continues our commitment to our core priorities while bringing annual growth back down to a more typical level of 3.5%. This strong fiscal management has ensured that in the coming year, we will be able to continue to focus on our priority areas, including some of the areas we are going to cover this morning in this hearing, the continuation of our long-term facilities planning, growing our hub schools, and making sure students and families have the resources they need to help their children succeed. The This morning, I am joined to my right by Dr. Sam DePina, Deputy Superintendent of Operations. Dr. Ana Tavares, our Deputy Superintendent of Community and Family Advancement, will be here shortly. Chief Financial Officer David Bloom is to my immediate left. And in the stands, representatives of several BPS departments, including capital planning, transportation, facilities, family and community advancement, hub schools, and opportunity youth. This budget before you reflects a $53.4 million spending increase over FY25, including $22 million in new investments and $21 million in cost savings due to reductions, including closures and grade configurations, which has allowed us to invest $43 million back into our schools. In addition, I have asked my team to identify an additional $5 million in reductions to central office budgets to reinvest in our schools. These cuts come from across our divisions, including additional efficiencies in operational areas like transportation and facilities, reviews of contract spending in academics, and a reduction in positions with a focus on vacancies. The vast majority of the district's funding, or 93%, is allocated to student services, including school budgets. The remaining 7% includes funding for some of the services that we're discussing here today, services that are budgeted centrally. There are a lot of topics on this morning's agenda. Many of them are related to meeting our goal of providing a high-quality student experience for every student, rigorous and culturally affirming learning experiences, access to wellness and enrichment opportunities, a network of supportive adults, and physical spaces that support learning. And just as a reminder, the high-quality student experience came and with those particular foci areas from surveying more than 10,000 of our families, parents, stakeholders over the past several years. We are proud of our accomplishments. BPS and City of Boston have opened 3 new or renovated school buildings since 2020, and 3 more are set to open this year. We created the capital planning department, and over the last 3 years, the BPS facilities team completed upgrades on 5 school playgrounds, with more in progress. We added air conditioning across schools, created new spaces in school buildings for STEM programming, therapeutic as well as spaces and pull-out areas for small group learning. Our brick and mortar work is deeply connected to our academic and programmatic goals. It is the foundation that allows us to build on our key initiatives by creating spaces that support the implementation of inclusive education, expanding bilingual education, SLIFE and newcomer programming, including dual language programs, new bilingual programs, and formalized newcomer programs at several high schools. Strengthening the secondary school ecosystem, including early college pathways and more AP course offerings, and supporting the expansion of our community hub schools. As you have seen in our school visits or as parents and BPS graduates yourselves, the reality is that many of our school buildings were built for a different time with a narrower understanding of what students need to thrive. Our long-term goal is to provide high-quality learning environments for every child and high-quality teaching environments for every educator with a physical space to support these environments. We do not want to shuffle students around from one situation to another that's not meeting standards. This is about students, not seats. As many of you know, the school committee recently approved the closure of 4 schools and a merger of 2 schools at the end of the 2026 school year. From this set of proposals, we expect to see one-time future cost savings of between $10 and $20 million. While the exact cost will be determined during the transitions, savings will be reinvested into education and the benefit of students by creating new programming and opportunities across our schools. To be clear, this is anticipated future savings. It is not reflected in this year's budget because we are committed to keeping all impacted schools staffed next year for a successful transition. Shortly, we will also update you on the implementation of Hub School strategy, which is focused on transforming 20 BPS schools into centers of support that meet students' academic, social, and emotional needs. Anchored in a nationally recognized model, this strategy ensures every investment drives outcomes in student success, school climate, and family engagement. And finally, members of my team are ready to address your questions related to services for newly arrived students and unhoused students. Our BPS transportation team is here to discuss some notable progress we've made around transportation, particularly following the addition of the Zoom technology platform last fall. The Zoom app provides real-time bus tracking and real-time data to families, and also allows families to notify the district when they do not need the bus. Ridership tracking through the Zoom app provides the district with accurate ridership data for the first time. To date, close to 1,000 students have opted out of transportation, and another 1,000 students have been identified as consistently not riding the bus. The efficiencies gained from identifying these students and opting them out of the bus are anticipated to result in at least a $1 million cost savings for the district. After an influx of newly arrived families last year, we have seen those numbers plateau and taper off. Between October and April of school year 23-24, we saw an influx of 1,048 students compared to 471 students during the same period the previous school year. And just as a reminder, when we say multilingual learner students, we're saying students as newcomer with levels ELD 1, 2, or 3. Our Welcome Services team, in collaboration with the Office of Multilingual and Multicultural Education, who you heard from yesterday, continues to do a wonderful job welcoming and supporting our new students and their families throughout the year. BPS is ready to welcome and support any student who chooses to enroll. Thank you again, Councilor Worrell and the entire City Council for giving us this opportunity to speak with you this morning. I look forward to sharing more about our work, as do my colleagues, and answering any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that we have been joined by the Vice Chair of the committee, Councilor Pepin, and also by Councilor Flynn. We will now have one round of public testimony. You can testify either in person or via Zoom. If you would like to testify virtually, please sign up in advance using the link below. After you signed up, you will be provided with the hearings Zoom link. Please make sure you are signed up into Zoom with the full name you signed up with to help us call on you appropriately. If you would like to testify in person, please sign up on the sheet near the chamber entrance, and when your name is called to testify, please step forward and introduce yourself into the microphone. Participants will be called on in order they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. I hear we have 2 people signed up to testify on Zoom, and we have Cheryl Buckman. The floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Buckman. I am a Dever alumni and parent to a child at the Dever, longtime resident of South Boston. I'm here to express deep frustration over BPS's decision to close the Dever, a crucial community hub school. Despite months of community advocacy, including rallies and testimony, BPS proceeded to close the school with a high-needs population. We had simple asks to BPS, which was relocation or a merger, and now it causes significant pain to families. Now, this is how a 68-year legacy goes, and this is something all of us didn't anticipate. BPS has to ensure, now that we're going into transition, Dever students are placed together with community input, tracking their progress, retaining some of the Dever staff, providing trauma-informed support, and forming a transparent transition team led by Dever parents, teachers, and students. Furthermore, the Dever building's future will be determined with community input, opposing its use not to charter schools or to give it to private development. Maybe this school can be used as a community-run or redesigned school model, preserving the Dever name. But at this time, we need to hold BPS accountable to these demands. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to my council colleagues in order of arrival for questions. I want to just acknowledge that Council Weber has also joined us. Council Braden, the floor is yours.
There we go. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think first off, I'd love to get more insight into the hub school, community-aligned hub school strategy and where we're at. It seems to me, and I may be wrong, that it seems like to be a very, I always think of hub schools as very organic, like from the bottom up, like what does the community need, and then they identify their needs and then they push it up the line. But this seems like more of a top-down approach, and where are we at? Like how many, you say we're going to have 20, how do we get there? And then also, like I know from even just funding for a resource like Kitty's Closet, that the Edison School lost their Kitty's Closet, and they need a Kitty's Closet as much as the Gardner does, but it's gone. Those are the sort of resources that schools need, and I just would love to get a better understanding of how that whole hub school approach is coming together. And then I know I would rather we talk about the Mary Lyon Upper School as being reconfigured rather than being closed, because folks feel that the programming is with children, parents will have the option to choose going to Brighton High School, and I know we're working with Brighton High School to get ready for that. It's not there yet, but I feel that the how we frame a conversation about changing, reconfiguring, closing something makes a difference. I don't mean to be sort of gaslighting people and telling them something that's not true, but the reality is when your population falls to the level that it does, that you can't really sustain a high school there anymore. What that then also means that we have to beef up and support the Brighton High School to do the very best they can for the student group that's coming in. So I know that's part of the conversation, but we shouldn't lose that in the mix. And then back to just even basic, I'll focus for this moment on, I'm just, the high school, we are constantly trying to improve the high school. I think the issue, I'm delighted to see there's an auditorium improvements in there. It may not all happen this year, but at least it's on the agenda. Because it is with the closure of the Jackson Man facilities we had an auditorium space over there for community events and meetings and whatever, and the high school needs to be able to pick that up for us. There's a roof problem, there's leaks in the roof, and the other issue that's been on the agenda for a long, long time, and I've mentioned it before, is the issue about window blinds. I think it was recommended like 12 years ago in a facility review that they needed window blinds, and they still haven't got them. So I'm going to elevate that on the list for Brighton High School as well. But anyway, whatever you want to say about, I'd love to hear more about hub schools and just the whole philosophy and why. How do we make sure that it's really like a ground-up approach rather than a top-down approach?
Great. So all excellent questions. Thank you for starting us off. And I am going to have Shanette Gray, who is Executive Director with Hub Schools, come down. What I will say from my perspective on Hub is it is very true that it is organic, and the idea is to solicit from the community what are the important values and priorities for them relative to programming, what the school, how the school interacts and supports the families and the students. From that, they design sort of a priority list. And part of the hub model is to really help figure out how to be able to support those priorities. With 20 of them and growing, we felt like we needed some kind of model template to follow. And so Shanette, along with BTU, because this is actually a joint effort with the union, as well as a group of the hub coordinators. They have traveled to New York and done a lot of looking at the model of community schools that exists in New York, not as a finite blueprint, you must do all of this, but rather here's a guide for you to be able to follow best practice with it. And Shanette, I don't know, this is Shanette Gray. I don't, if you would like to add to that.
Sure, great job. So what I would like to add is that for many communities, it is a bottom-up approach. what's unique and really special about Boston is that the superintendent and the powers that be saw it fit to say, okay, this is something that we need in our school district. And so many communities would love to have a district that focuses on community hub schools. And so our approach is we definitely bring the community in, especially via our hub coordinators. And so one of their main responsibilities is to tap the teachers, to tap the community partners and families. And so our approach is definitely bringing in the community to get their voice. But what's really special is the fact that we have created the infrastructure to support that to take fruition, which many districts don't have.
So, you know, my sense of what a community hub school would be, that community is the important piece, and it goes beyond just the school community. It's the surrounding community, that neighbourhood folks who could be partners, but also surrounding community that may need resources, that could use the school building or the school facilities to have space for events and programming. And like, I know the one that comes to mind is the Gardner Pilot Academy, their hub school. It evolved over like 30 years, and they really incredible work with ESOL and adult education, and you know, Kitty's class, the whole range of different things that they are doing or were able to do, and just that sense of like community school, and the community is the important word in that phrase. Like, so I know, like, are we trying to reinvent the wheel when we have a model that worked well, or and I'd love to know, you know, is there a document, this Community Schools Forward Essentials, Community School Transformation? Is there I'd love to see the report from is it New York, or the other models that you've looked at?
Sure. So we are based on a national model. And so it's not reinventing the wheel. It's an established model. It's research-based, evidence-proved. And so when I want to make sure I understand what you're saying about reinventing the wheel, we're just implementing a model that has worked for years.
Yeah, so we've had, how many hub schools have we had in Boston up to now? I think we're expanding it to other schools. How many have we had?
Sure. So up until last year, we had about 14. But I know there have been iterations over 20 plus years of various models of community schools.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
I think my time's up. So
I think to your point, Counselor, we wanted, because there wasn't consistency across, like Garden is a great example because it was a long-standing one, but there wasn't a formal definition within BPS for it. And so we wanted to make sure from an equity standpoint that there were particular things we provide and support when a school is designated a hub. One of those is a hub coordinator, right? One is a neighborhood partnership. YMCA is actually our major partner on this. And so I think some of this was standardizing that in an evidence-based model so that we could then expand it beyond the few that existed more kind of grassroots organically. And I think that's really the traction we've gotten, that now that we have 20, we've also used it very consistently for schools that are merging, because we find it's a very powerful model to help two schools come together as a way to be able to define what's important to them. Or when a school goes through a major reconfiguration, such as the Lions will be, the pre-K to 6 and the high school detaching, that's another example where that's appropriate for a hub model to help kind of galvanize that new community around that school.
yeah.
And then just a quick note, if I may, Chair, on Brighton. Thank you for tireless advocacy for Brighton High. We agree. We think that it is an exceptionally important comprehensive school in the community, particularly because Brighton Alston is landlocked a bit.
Yeah.
What I think is exciting is that we have partnerships with CCE now, as you know, to really make that whole area a hub. And it's really our first regional hub in a lot of ways in that sense. Brighton High itself, in terms of the facilities, whether it's science labs, lockers, improvements to the gym, lighting, those are all going to be very intentional investments we're making. The auditorium you have advocated for now multiple times. You see that reflected in the line item. And we will take a look at the blinds. I know that's been a historic issue.
Yes.
But that is something that I think we'll
Yes.
take a look. Actually, I
Well,
think
we were going to say exactly what you said. so we're
Chief
fine.
Ford is there, so, okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Good.
So we're on that one.
On that one, very good. I'll deal my time, and I'm up over time, so thank you. Did
Yeah,
Brian
I don't know if
If you wanted to.
you wanted to add?
Good morning, councilors. I was actually going to add a lot of the same, so thank you, Superintendent, for
Like
covering
mine,
most of
like
that.
mine. Yeah.
Yep, priority list, equitized list, so we have everything that's happening in the district being prioritized, so we're addressing all the needs across the district.
very good. Thank you.
And thanks again for your advocacy.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Never ending. I'm very proud. It's a beautiful building, and I'm really
it's
glad to
gorgeous.
see the new labs have made a huge difference. And it's just one thing at a time. And then trying to find resources from developing, incoming developers or whatever that can add some value to it. Then we can. The labs are one of those items that we managed to do. So we're very pleased with that. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, I'd just like to recognize Dr. Ana Tavares has joined us, who is our Deputy Superintendent for Family and Community Advancement.
Awesome, thank you. Just want to acknowledge that we have been joined by Council Fitzgerald and also Council Santana. Vice Chair Pepin, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to the panelists for being here again this morning for yet another amazing hearing. When I'm looking at the agenda of what the topics are for today, I can't even start explaining to you how important all of these topics are. Merging, closures, facilities, transportation, move arrivals, etc. All that play a huge role in my district, and it's something that I've really been working on since getting into the council. So as you all know, I'm a big fan of BPS transportation. It's probably the topic I've spoken about the most as a councilor. So I would love to know if there's an update on any other RFIs for the potential cameras that are coming to the stop signs of the school buses. I would also like to know, because of the new implementation of the Zoom app, has that led to any cost savings for transportation? Obviously, it leads to more effectiveness in terms of use. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. We'll have Dan Rosengart, our Transportation Director, come down, and we have seen a lot of success with the data and collecting the data and implementing it, and we have made some strides in some cost savings that Superintendent alluded to earlier, but I'll turn it over to Dan to give more specifics.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and Councilor Pepin, thank you for that question and for all of your ongoing support and partnership. So first, to the question about the change in state law with the stop arm cameras, we're similarly very excited about that, and we've been in the process over the last month or so, or a couple months since the law changed, working with our partners at Boston Transportation Department and Boston Police Department to look at kind of how this could and should work in Boston, with the goal of getting to a point of releasing an RFP, hopefully sooner rather than later. And then secondly, around the Zoom app and some of the efficiencies that we've seen. So as I think the superintendent mentioned in her opening remarks, one of the biggest pieces of this is that it's provided us with comprehensive, accurate ridership data for the very first time. About 2,000 students have been identified as consistently not riding the bus this year. So that's almost 10% of the students that we scheduled to ride the bus at the start of the year. 1,000-ish of those students, we have, through outreach to the families in the schools, been able to opt out of transportation kind of proactively. And that has led just this year to a lot of the on-time performance improvements we've seen, and because of efficiencies that we've gotten on the routing side. So there's about 4% fewer bus stops in the system now than there were at the start of this school year because of this work. There's another 1,000 students who don't ride the bus consistently, but are still have a seat on the bus. Our Transportation Advisory Council last spring developed and unanimously recommended a ridership procedure for pausing student bus assignments for students who don't ride the bus now that we have this data. And so that's something that we've been looking very seriously at and are working towards implementing that very soon this spring. And that will make sure that as we route for future school years, that we're only routing for students who need and use the bus, and that we're being as efficient as possible. And so we expect to see, as the superintendent said, I think at least $1 million in savings from that next year. And as we get into the actual routing, I think there's the potential for more.
I love that. I love that when we get to see some of that long-term investment come into play, where obviously it's very hard to see in the beginning, but I personally knew that this was going to be a good outcome for the city. Thank you for the work you do, Dan. Appreciate it. And I'll be highlighting and giving a shout out to the bus drivers tomorrow here in the chamber. So
yes, we couldn't do it without them. Thank you.
Thank you.
In regards to mergers and closings, there was two schools are being closed in my district, in my neighborhood of Rosendale, which is the Philbrick and the Sumner School. And it's becoming a new school. I would like to know what decision-making goes behind that. What cost savings are there when you merge two schools? Obviously, we know that it impacts families because there were some families that are unhappy with it. But then I think people are starting to realize in Roswell that, oh, we're actually getting a brand new school. This might be a good thing. So I'd just like to know what goes behind all of that.
Sure. So I'm going to actually have David just talk a little bit about the cost savings to start. But I am going to take a couple of minutes to explain this. I think it's an excellent question. I'm sure other counselors have this question with mergers or closures in their area as well. So we'll start with David.
Thank you so much. So I think when we think about, from the finance office, when we think about the long-term facilities plan, the work we're doing, mergers are actually not a major cost-saving item. What they're actually more about is increasing economies of scale and providing schools that can get better services for kids. So actually, I was thinking about this in our conversation yesterday when we were talking about arts and music, right? But the new Sarah Roberts School is going to have 2 dance teachers, a theater teacher, PE, music, all sorts of services that they're able to achieve at that scale, right? And I think, they'll have a nice new library, all sorts of things. And I think, especially for the Philbrick, right, in its smaller building, these were services that kids didn't necessarily have access to. It's still at a scale that is, we think, very manageable for an K0 to 6 elementary school. And so we are definitely going to see some savings. Transportation, operating one less site is always helpful. We'll see some, long-term, we'll see some facilities and operating costs, depending upon what we do with the physical buildings. But really, mergers are mostly about being able to do more with the same budget in schools and really offer more to the schools involved. And I think, as we think about the sort of next round of mergers that were announced and are coming up, right, it's so exciting that we're now going to have a school at scale to offer a Cabo Verdean dual language program at the Frederick, for example, right? So for us, when we did the Shaw Taylor as well, it wasn't so much about saving money. We saved a little bit here and there. We definitely did save some, but these mergers are really about the economies of scale and what you can offer in a merged school that you might not have been able to offer at the 2 schools separately.
Right, and you're going to hear the term high-quality student seat again and again from capital planning. This is a big focus for us of moving kids through merger into a more high-quality seat, and in closure, the same thing. We owe it to the students and the families when we close a school to identify where those high-quality seats are, and then through the transfer process, be able to support them. I want to let Sarah King, who's the Deputy Chief for the Capital Planning, just address very quickly kind of what that process is to identify which schools should merge.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for your question. I really appreciate it and appreciate the advocacy for Sarah Roberts and all of the other schools. So we released metrics last spring following the publication of our long-term facilities plan. So those were the decision-making metrics and a data framework that helps guide transparent and clear decision-making in this process, because we know that's extremely important. All of that data is public on the Green New Deal for BPS website, so folks can look up what's going on with my school in relation to the metrics, which I'll walk through. We benchmarked our work against other districts because, as we know, Boston is not alone in needing to do this challenging work of recalibrating our enrollment to the number of schools that we're operating. And it's for the reasons that David was just talking about. We want to be able to not spread resources thin and offer a full array of programming that our students deserve. And that's what really guides this work. So we looked at other districts, and we took our community-informed vision that the superintendent referenced earlier, that high-quality student experience, which came through the school design study process a couple years ago, where we surveyed 10,000 of our stakeholders and heard clearly from our community what they collectively wanted to be true for all students. And so that is embedded within the data that we're using. And so the three primary criteria that we use are the building experience score, utilization, and continuum of services. I'll offer just very quick definitions of each. So the building experience score is a measure of whether a building is able to physically support the things that our community said they wanted to be true through that school design study process that the superintendent referenced. A building's utilization gets at how resourced a school is or not. So an underutilized school means an under-resourced school for our students. And so that's a really important thing to look at. And then finally, we have a continuum of services metric for our facilities, and that helps us to understand the degree to which our buildings are able to support our inclusive education work. And so that has to do with, are there adequate number of pull-out spaces? Are there flexible spaces? Are there spaces to support teachers' collaboration, et cetera? And so those are the three primary metrics that we use. But we don't look at just those three primary metrics alone. We also look at things like the walk zone, so how close students live to a school, which, as we know, connects to transportation. We know that too many of our students are on too long a bus rides, and so we look at how long are the bus rides for each of these students, because we know, and we've heard from our community multiple times, that we want to ensure that we are providing high quality options to our families and students close to home if they choose. And so we also look at some neighborhood level dynamics. We also look at choice data. We also look at some school specific data and make sure that all of these proposals are vetted with folks who know the schools through like an internal kind of cross-functional group. That process was laid out in the racial equity planning tool that we used to guide the process this year. And so that's also public on the BPS website. And then the ultimate decisions were made by the superintendent and the mayor to bring to the school committee, who ultimately voted on this round of proposals on March 20th. And I know that the Philbrick-Sumner proposals were put forward before this process was formalized, so I just wanted to note that as well.
And the only thing I would add to that, Councilor, is that we are now working off of an 18-month predictable cycle with these announcements. So that's the goal that we're shooting
Right.
for.
Okay.
That's right.
I really appreciate this breakdown, and
Thank you.
again, just appreciate the advocacy and proactiveness you've all done in Rosendale with those mergers, so really appreciate that. That's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that Councilor Murphy has joined us. Councilor Flynn, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the superintendent and the superintendent's team for being here. The first public testimony was from a parent about the Devers School, which is just outside of my district. I know that's a painful decision for many parents and students, a wonderful school community. I also had Excel High School, South Boston High School closing in my district. I was a substitute school teacher there. Has a long history in South Boston. So disappointed on both of those decisions, obviously. My question is, so then I want to go back to some of the funding. I listened to one of the assistant superintendents just discuss about capital budget and funding related issues. But can, David, maybe if you can give me an idea, the funding for the White Stadium, was that being allocated through BPS capital or operating?
The funding for White Stadium is coming through capital.
Okay. And how much?
91.
Sorry?
91.
91?
91 million?
Yes.
Okay. So through that capital at BPS, is BPS borrowing that money, that 91 million? Where is that 91 million?
That's through the city's main capital budget. And we'll be able to, I think we're coming
The
for a
17th.
hearing on the 17th to talk about that in more detail. In partnership with the city's team. So BPS and the city will be at that hearing.
So the city's not borrowing that?
The city is.
The city
city is-
borrowing that 91 million?
The city's following their typical capital budget process, and they've allocated the 91 million for this project through their capital budget.
But are they borrowing that 91 million?
It's through the regular process, yes.
They are, okay. That's not through the free cash program, is it?
I'm not aware. We'd have to
I'm not
double check.
totally sure. I think we'd have to bring in Jim and his team to talk about that on Thursday.
And we can elaborate at the hearing on the 17th as well.
Okay. So the reason I bring that up, I've talked with the superintendent a bunch of times, and I appreciate your support, Superintendent, on Josiah Quincy School Gymnasium, and we've done a visit, and we've talked yesterday about it as well. But I still can't accept that we're not able to do anything on the gymnasium in time for the next school year. And that's frustrating to me, and I can't accept that, because those are my constituents, and they deserve every opportunity to have a gym like every other students that's welcoming, accessible, and allows them to enjoy physical fitness. So why is that not a priority for the gymnasium with the metal divider in the middle of the school? And if that's not a priority, but some of the schools in my district were a priority to close, but I can't get that fixed. And that's, if you think I'm frustrated, well I am, because I just can't accept when something can't be done in my district, and I need to advocate for my constituents to get that fixed. And I'm hearing about all these wonderful programs, and I think that's great, but I need to get something done for my constituents, and it's not getting done, and that's my frustration.
We appreciate your frustration. We appreciate your advocacy, and it is a priority for us, just to name that. We can walk through the work we have done to begin to remedy the issue at the gym. So Chief Ford is here, and he can talk a little bit more about the assessments we've done and what our plans are for the gymnasium. But we do take that very seriously, sir, and we are following up with that.
But it's not in the capital budget?
But we're trying to address it on the operating side of the house as well. So we have a combination of ways that we're trying to get out the project, so we can talk more about that in more detail.
Yeah, but I need that in the capital budget, though. You know, everything else is in the capital budget, and there's good programs in the capital budget, but that's also a good program to fix the gymnasium for mostly Chinese kids and students of color and students with disabilities. I have to advocate for them, and I just can't accept that, you know, it's not going to get done.
But we're happy to bring that back to the team and discuss that as a possibility. But in the meantime, we can discuss at least what we're doing on our side, if that's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. I think two issues, Counselor, which we've flagged, right? One is the immediacy of that safety with the strip. The other is the long-term solution with the gym and how short-term that could be. So we're happy to take that back and look at it within the capital. But in the meantime, I know that Chief Ford has gone out himself and actually looked at it.
Good morning, Counselor. So thank you for having me. And I do want to say that there has been some progress that we had on the gym. I actually was there this past week. We were able to kind of walk the area and make sure that we can figure out where the flaps were kind of sticking up from the metal trim that goes across the center of the floor. Put together a plan off of our operating budget to figure out how we can get it to a make-safe condition. Earlier in this fiscal year, we also were able to get a quote for what it would take to replace the floor. Due to the type of material, it's going to take us a little bit longer to figure out how we can replace it because it's a rubber floor, and breaking that into a couple of different areas because the gym as a whole isn't being done, although we can address the different parts of the gym in full. So the lighting, the flooring, the walls, the aesthetics will all be prioritized through a regular process that we have in doing work year over year that does exist in a version of the capital budget. That would be like our flooring plans that exist there, and you'll see the BPS capital maintenance line that helps us get some of this work done and prioritized. And while it might not be the first item that's on the list for the flooring, it is on the list for us to address.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your response. It might be a priority for you to have this as part of the process, but it's a priority for me to get it done now. That's my challenge. Is I can't tell students that start the school in September and August that it's a priority, but we're not getting it done. I can't accept that. My response is I want to get it done, and I want to get it done this summertime. Summer.
Yeah, we're going to work quickly to address the safety issue. That's the immediate hazard, is our priority right now, and then we'll work on the rest of the flooring within operating, and we'll bring back the conversation about how we may be able to add it to the capital budget with the team.
But Sam, everything you have capital plans for a lot of projects, but you don't have a capital plan for my constituents. I think my constituents are also important to the discussion, and I don't think they're being part of the long-range planning here, and that's what I'm disappointed with.
Councilor Flynn, if I could add, we do have a couple of projects that are happening at the Josiah Quincy Elementary School currently. One in partnership with PFD, where we're doing the envelope that helps address that exact space. And part of the reason that we couldn't do the work initially because of the penetrations on that area would affect the flooring in that area as well. Also why we went with the rubber roof. And I can guarantee you as well that the work order to address the work in the gym to make it safe can happen immediately, and something our team can get started on right away.
I think as we saw, Counselor, we saw the water penetration start in the back hall. That was because they needed an entirely different roof. So that's been kind of the priority. But I think we hear you, and so we'll go back, take a look at that, and also the timeline for how we might be able to get that to happen quicker.
Thank you, Superintendent.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Council Weber, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Superintendent Skipper, I guess, yesterday we talked a little bit about homelessness among BPS students. And you talked about the trauma, that the kids go through during that process. And I think the studies have shown that kids who experience homelessness have lower graduation rates, higher absenteeism, emotional distress impacts learning, and so I know the BPS has like a robust set of programs, a bunch of different approaches to prevent, deal with kids who are experiencing homelessness, but also prevent it. So, I know we launched an Access to Counsel program. Can you just talk about, what you think about the program and how it's going?
Yeah, Brian Ford, director of our Opportunity Youth Program, is here, and he could help answer some. I'm sorry, Brian Marks. I apologize.
Everyone's Brian Ford now.
Sorry, I apologize. Brian, thank you.
Hi. So again, I'm Brian Marks. I oversee the Opportunity Youth Department. The Access to Counsel program, or also known as A2C, has been invaluable in terms of having a tangible support system for BPS families who are facing the threat of eviction. A benefit of some of the established infrastructure that we already had in terms of our Emergency Homelessness Intervention Program, our EHIP program, is that we're able to really integrate the Access to Counsel program with existing case management services so that not only are families connecting through Greater Boston Legal Services for support and no-cost legal counsel through the eviction process, but they also have case management services, including wraparound services to access critical needs like child care, or workforce development programming, budgeting support, emergency financial assistance for unexpected precipitating events. So we're really trying to build a comprehensive offering that wraps around the whole family. And the way our structure is set up is that we have at least one staff person who's designated as the school-based homeless liaison at every school across the district. So that also ensures that we have communication points between case managers who we contract with Family Aid Boston, as well as Greater Boston Legal Services, so that we have open lines of communication with school support staff.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I guess, Superintendent, can you just talk a little bit more about the impact? I mean, I feel like when we compare when we look at MCAS numbers or different metrics, we're not, and then somebody says, oh, you look at Wellesley, and but my sense is they don't have 10% of their students experiencing homelessness.
Yeah.
Or can you just talk a little bit more about how that impacts the district as a whole and how it functions?
Sure. So, I think first I'll talk about the students and the families, right? I mean, the growth we've seen, unfortunately, with housing insecurity has been greater than I've seen during my time in BPS over all the years. And I think the widespread problem that it is impacts the students on so many levels. It's not just a student issue, it's a family systems issue. And so as a result, you really need to wrap around that family with everything from not just the housing, but the food, the clothing, transportation, job. It's really all of it. And that is a heavy lift within the school district to try to do that. I think having social workers in all of the schools has been a huge step, because the social worker is more able to kind of do that outreach to the family system. I also think our partners like Herc and Hearn coming to the table, Higher Ground, have been really instrumental. Like we're blessed in Boston to have such dedicated partners. All that said, that's a huge number of kids. And where we see it is things like for the students, they are often, their bus route is often much longer to get back and forth to where their temporary housing is. So students that start with us in one location then get shifted or moved to another, they then have to, travel upwards of an hour to be able to get back and forth. It also means that can preclude them from participating in athletics, extra activities, the kinds of things that we talked so much yesterday, and Councilor Worrell brought up about like the importance of the extended day. So there's just a huge amount of loss for students in addition to not knowing where they're sleeping. What I most worry about is not the families that we've identified. I certainly worry about that. But I worry about all the families we haven't identified. Families who in this climate are afraid to come forward because of what could happen, or young people who are couch surfing and have mental illness or addiction, or have been kicked out by a parent, and as a result they literally don't know where they're sleeping every 24 hours. Those are the students and the families I worry about the most, because they're not attached to any known resource right now. So while to Brian's point, we say 5,000, that's probably underestimating a good deal the amount of families that are actually impacted by this.
Thanks. And I don't know if Brian knows this, or the other Brian, or the superintendent. But in terms of, you mentioned busing, outside the district. I think we talked about $17 million being spent on busing kids who are placed in shelters. They could be as far away as Worcester, I guess. Does that money come out of the BPS budget when we're paying for the busing? How does that work?
Yes. Yeah. So the money all starts by coming out of the BPS budget. That being said, there are two ways we get reimbursements from the state for that funding. The first is through circuit breaker for students with disabilities who are bused out of the city. And the second is through what are called McKinney-Vento reimbursements for students who are homelessness or in foster care. Also, some of those payments we cost share with the sending district. So if a student moves to Waltham and is staying in our district, we might share the cost of the busing with that district.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask one quick question, Chair? Sorry, unrelated. Just, the West Roxbury High School is in the capital budget again. What is the plan? Advocating on behalf of my constituents, I think West Roxbury could use a high school, and I know a lot of families. I talk to a lot of young families in the district who are, they got kids in first, second grade, and they're, they want that on the horizon. Look at like New York City. They've got Staten Island, which is kind of an outlying borough. They have Staten Island Tech, which is one of the best high schools in the state, and that works for that system. Anyway, so what is the plan for the West Roxbury High School campus?
I mean, right now, there is no immediate plan for the West Roxbury complex. Our capital budget, to Councilor Flynn's point, is stretched so far right now with projects that have already been committed, either previously and or within the last several years. We face the challenge in BPS of such an aged system where our average building score is 33, 32 out of 100, really antiquated buildings, and then the annual maintenance of those buildings eats up a big part of our budget just to be able to keep buildings that are really not designed for the long haul online. So we couldn't move fast enough in some ways, but we don't have the money to move faster right now, right? And so in terms of what's on the table, finishing, we just did the Josiah Quincy Upper, extremely proud of that building. Councilor Flynn's been a huge advocate within the community. We have the Carter School, which is very exciting, coming online, but also an expensive build. We have Shaw Taylor Merged School that will be sited, and then that will be an MSBA project, as will Ruth Batson. Those are big projects, in addition to PJK, which was an addition, EMK that we have to cite. So we're really trying to move as fast as possible to create high-quality seats so that we can move students as we close or merge into a much better building situation and a high-quality seat. But the capital dollars over the next 5 years are more than allocated. So in terms of West Roxbury right now, there isn't any immediate, nor do I see in the short term anything within the next 5 years that we would necessarily be doing with that, just based on what's already been allocated.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I guess if just a point is the concern is, the number of students we have in BPS and that being low, historical low, and retaining residents, and I think definitely that's an area where a lot of people are staying in Boston but not having their kids in BPS, and I think giving them an option there would increase, would tap into that, and certainly make a lot of people in my district happy. But yeah, I appreciate the answer. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Fitzgerald. The floor is yours.
Chair, thank you. Thank you all for being here again. We'll start with mergers, closures. I know we've got a couple in District 3, the Dever, the Clap, merging with, I believe, the Winthrop, yep. Right? Yeah, good, because I know it's not my district, but over to the Lila Frederick. So understanding that that's hard for families when closures happen, but I do appreciate and understand the need of why it has to happen. And even though it's tough for the families, especially of those of the Dever community. But a couple of the things come off of that secondarily, like the effect on the Russell School and the need for that to have a 6th grade. Is that part of the plan, or hopefully? And if so, how might that work? Because I know space is always an issue. Yeah. So it's an excellent through line. We are actively in conversations about the Russell and how to be able to get that 6th grade in there. It would be through some combination likely of looking at the population of the strands that are there now, and if there's additional consolidation we can do, as well as some of the physical space that exists within that building. So I know the team is actively working on it. I will ask Sarah if there's anything additional, and if so, she can come down. If not, then there you go. We'll take it. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much for that question. So as the superintendent said, we are in conversations with the school leader, with some of our central office colleagues about how we can make that work. In 2019, we passed a grade configuration policy in the district, as you probably know, and the Russell is one of the few schools left that doesn't meet that, and so we're working aggressively to try to make sure that we can get all of our schools, including the Russell, to align with that grade configuration that was passed in 2019. So I think our next meeting with the school leader is in May, to try to get that done as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Sarah, you might want to stay right there, I'll be honest with you.
I'll hang out.
That kind of leads to the next question. I know the CLAP is one of the ones, Mary. Do we have a plan for what is happening with the CLAP, or is that even a potential part of the Russell solution, or just wondering if there's any update at all on the CLAP and what its future might hold, if it becomes housing, stays a school, et cetera?
That's a great question. So we don't have a current plan for the CLAP and the Winthrop buildings, but we have sort of a set of guidelines that we want to be thinking through with our communities and with a lot of offices, like the mayor's office, for example, and the planning department. And so first and foremost, we want to do a thorough assessment of whether there are any BPS educational needs that can be served through those schools. We want to be careful because, as we know, we're trying to move those students out of buildings that aren't offering a full continuum of services and all the things that we talked about. And so we want to be really mindful. And as the superintendent just said, our money is tight in terms of being able to make upgrades. And so, however, we know that with our student population, some of their needs are evolving. And so there could be some programmatic or other administrative needs that could be served by those buildings. And so we're assessing that now. If that's not the case, then we will work with the mayor's office and the planning department to figure out what community needs can be met through that process.
Right. One of the things we do see with UPK is, in particularly the Dorchester-Roxbury areas, the need for additional early childhood seats. And so sometimes you're able, with a school where we've done it now a bunch of times, where the 7th and 8th grade comes off, and you can repurpose and create a bigger strand at the bottom to be able to accommodate that. Additionally, there's just sometimes that there may need to be a building that's used in that particular facet. The CLAP does have baby bathrooms, right? So they already kind of have that. They actually have newer bathrooms. So there could be some use to that. I think the other thing we haven't yet done, but we want to sort of start to look at is what kinds of nonprofits can we bring into neighborhoods where often the building is the tension point for them, but they have a wonderful array of services. And what might we situate in that North Dorchester, South Boston line that could be supportive of that neighborhood? So I think that, once we get the Winthrop and CLAP merged successfully into Lila Frederick, we'll then kind of turn attention to some of these other buildings.
Thank you. I'll move to facilities quickly. I have two issues under facilities, not issues, but one, Superintendent, you and I toured the Murphy a couple weeks ago. There was the Murphy School entrance, looking at electrifying that. And just hope that can continue on. I know we had a rough number, but it doesn't seem like in a capital planning process, it's a small drop in that bucket, right?
Yeah, capital projects, we tend to leave for the bigger type projects, but some of these smaller ones we've been doing in-house and operating, so we can talk more about that.
All right, so it might be for that. I don't know, Brian, if you got something.
Good morning, Councilor Fitzgerald. How are you doing?
Good.
So we actually had our security team, facility security team, not to be mixed up with our safety security team, go out to the site and take a look at what we can do in order to increase security around the vestibule. We're talking with the school in terms of safe operating procedures within the building, as well as pricing out the sash on the doors to figure out if we can add in that additional layer, while also making sure somebody sets eyes in that exact location for best use.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And we would call that a safety, right? A safety issue, which when we deal with our operating dollars becomes priority, or capital dollars can become priority.
Awesome. Then maybe not a priority, but still have to ask because it's not under so much safety, but a gym at the Kenny School, because it doesn't have, I don't know if you go to, and I know this is probably in the larger thing, and I know money's tight, but I'm still going to advocate. When I take my kids to a dance there, it's always in the hallways, and it's it's an absolute it's madness. It's great. It's fun. But the entire school, when you have to have the dance in the hallway or in a classroom, right, it's tough. And so obviously advocating for some sort of, there's the space, that's all. Every time I drop my kids up, there's space back there, there's room, and it's always like there could be an addition to the school, could be more seats, could be a gym, could be a library, could be a stage, something for performing arts, etc. But always continue to advocate for that.
We'll see if the Brian Ford has any comment on that.
Yeah, I think in that regard, all we can do right now is take a good look at that space and assess what it could be used for, possibly multi-purpose, and talk with the school about their day-to-day, and then it may be talking to our friends in capital planning to see if that might make something.
I'm realistic in the understanding of my ask, but I still have to ask nonetheless. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge that Councilor Coletta Zapata has joined us. Councilor Santana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Superintendent, and to the team. I'm going to start with, I guess, just facilities. I know we focus, actually, I want to focus on the Blackstone School in District 2. Superintendent, we had the opportunity to go tour that school together. I just wanted to see if, what are the updates, future plans for the Blackstone. I attended the Blackstone School. Doesn't look much different from when I attended back in the day. I know we had some issues with some of the walls between classrooms. So I just wanted to know if that school is getting any investments.
So maybe Chief Ford could just talk about what we have been able to do. I mean, the Blackstone is a school we put in for MSBA. We unfortunately did not get that several years back, but it is definitely a building that needs to be completely rehabbed, no question. The issue is it's twofold. One is you have multiple disabilities in there, and so we've done some immediate stuff relative to the ramp and some pieces within the building that Chief Ford can speak to there. But it is, again, one of those buildings that is, it's the same thing with the pool in it. We need a longer-term solution for that building. That anything we do now would likely within a couple of years be turned around. That would be a candidate at some point in the future for us to re-put in for MSBA. But right now we don't have that. We have enough buildings in there already. So, but Brian, can you talk a little bit about what we have been able to do?
Sure. Morning, Councilor Santana. Thank you, Superintendent. So in the building currently, we know that we haven't been able to put forth the capital expenditure that we've really so want in this building. And up until this point, like the superintendent said, we've done a lot of the brickwork on the exterior in order to make sure that students continue to have a safe arrival zone and a safer entry into the building that's as close to ADA accessible as we can get without the building being completely rehabbed. On the interior of the building, we continue to make lighting upgrades, often moving to LEDs where there was incandescent, and oftentimes replacing the ceiling panels that are affiliated with that as well. Also because of the kind of the porous or what can be building envelope issues that happen in there, we make sure to address a lot of the ceiling and the wall work so that we still have an aesthetic that suits the students while we wait for that larger investment to happen in the building. Very similar to with some new additions that we had a couple years ago, the library that's in the building so that we're continuing to serve those students, and then making sure that we put it as a challenge building for our custodians. So when the custodians are there, we have more often, a few more assigned so that with that very large space, we can start to address the majority of those issues faster than it might be in some other buildings as well.
And the only thing I would add to that is with the pool, there is money in the capital budget to fully assess what's possible with the pool to understand the issues, and then that'll give us an idea of what we may need to spend on it as well.
Awesome. That's good to hear. And that's the pool I learned to swim in at, so really, really important. No, thank you for that. I think, Chief Ford, just very quickly, I think, can you just generally explain the process for schools to get facilities or maintenance done within the school, and kind of walk us through that process and the timeline?
Yeah, absolutely. So the timeline I'll start with first, and the timeline is going to vary depending on what the type of project is. But we have a tool that exists in the schools right now called Asset Essentials. It took us a couple of years to roll it out, but it works really well. It's a work order program. that gets the work directly to the person who's going to be doing it and sets up an autoresponder. If you were to walk into a building today and you had an issue, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to let your school admin know. That may be the secretary in the building, it might be an administrative team member near the front of the building. Your principal is another member that can enter it, and your custodian. And that's going to be your first point of contact in terms of getting something completed in the building, whether it's a light that might be out, a ripped carpet tile, or any other thing that you might notice about the building that's happening. In addition to this, when that work order goes in, we do have another category that is for modification to buildings and grounds. And what that allows is for our team to assess pipeline ideas where it might be like, we want a bathroom renovation, we want a new playground, we want 17 extra parking spaces. We are able to assess all of those needs in the same place and get it to the appropriate staff member within the facilities department. And if it exists outside of the facilities department, we'll make sure to liaise with our partners in there. In terms of the timeline, if it's something like a life and safety issue, immediately our team will drop. We also expect a phone call from the custodian or the principal or the administrative team member to address that right away so that there's not a lingering problem. Outside of that, we do try to get to the school within a week, oftentimes less than that, and resolve the problems as much as possible. On average, more than 1,000 work orders are resolved per day, so our teams are doing, I think, a fantastic job, but we could always be doing a little bit better.
And the only thing I would add to that is that we also have a regional model that we've talked about a lot, and operational leaders are part of that team. And what we also do is communicate through the facilities department all the work that we do to all the school leaders, remind them of it more globally, and the operational leaders serve as a liaison between the facilities department and the schools to keep updates and statuses on the work that's happening as well.
Right. And I would just last comment on it, but I can't underscore enough, this is exactly why taking older buildings offline is helping the entire system, because the amount of dollars to fix things in maintenance that come up or try to get them to what's ultimately a subpar level just to exist, if we can repurpose those dollars into fewer buildings and build newer buildings, then we'll start to create a footprint that our students actually really deserve and that they want.
Like maybe Jim at the county.
Awesome. Very quickly, I know yesterday I asked about our on-house students, and I think I got ahead of myself knowing that this was a topic during today's conversation. I'm sorry if I missed it in your opening remarks. So if you did answer this or talked about this, I'll go and rewatch. But are there any real plans of, the schools that we're closing to, converting them into housing or conversations about that?
To the best of my knowledge, not for housing. What I thought you were going to say is actually a really interesting model that's existed one or two places, where you take a closed school building and you partner with a nonprofit and you create a place for youth that are unhoused.
Are there any?
There isn't yet, but it's in my mind that is something we would be interesting to poke at.
Absolutely. I would be definitely very interested in that. Thank you to the team, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Council President Louis Jen and also Council Mejia. Council Murphy, the floor is yours.
Chair, thank you for being here, being back. My first question about school mergers and closures. You mentioned how, and we've talked before, and I know we've had conversations here on the council about the Blackstone. If it was with BCYF facilities with Brian and BPS, about the needs there, not just the pool, but the overall needs. And Councilor Flynn and I were at the Read Across the Blackstone, which I know Courtney brought that tradition from the Murphy over, so it was wonderful to join her there. And was just reminded, hadn't been in there for a few years, but how much love it does need. But when it got denied the MSBA, and I know all of them don't get passed through, it then didn't get put on a plan. With the MSBA that we did approve for Madison Park, if it doesn't get approved, what is the plan? Will we then not move forward, or have we committed that we will find the money to?
I think what has been committed is that we recognize Madison Park needs to happen. We cannot have a great district in a great city without having a state-of-the-art CTE vocational high school. So one way or the other, we have to do it. We're very much hoping MSBA does come through because we believe it's actually a really good project for MSBA. We also believe that we can then retain all of the programs that our students and our families deserve. So we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it, but I do think that there's been a commitment that we need to move forward with that building.
And the application is into MSBA.
Thank you. Okay. And I'll advocate for the Kenny right up the street from me. It has, as you know, a huge side yard, which I've always thought should be built out like the Kennedy has been in East Boston.
PGK,
So, and I've been in like the kindergarten classrooms, which are small with no windows, or when we used to vote and go into the back door there, the basement. I mean, they use every space that they need, and they are creative, and thank you to the staff for doing that. But we definitely have land around the Kenny that we could build out, and I think we should consider that, because the neighbors, you know, the residents, as one of our colleagues, their kids go there. You know, we want to keep families in our public schools in our neighborhoods, and that's one thing that I think we should consider. I do just want to get on the record, Councilor Worrell and I, on our first hearing of this year back in January, did file that hearing order, which all our colleagues signed on to examine the BPS closures and the long-term facilities plan, which we have not scheduled yet. So that's my plug to the Education Committee to let's get that scheduled, because we definitely have specific questions that we have, but we're hearing, right? And the district counselors often speak directly to the schools in their district about what they're hearing from families, staff, when they're visiting the schools, and, you know, just citywide. So it would be great to get those, you know, have that hearing so we can have answers. And like you said, it's hard conversations, and there's necessary mergers and closures, but I'm a big believer in, you know, being forthcoming, and then it helps the conversation, and we can all be in a place where we can work together, and how do we move forward if there's closures, mergers, and all of that. So on the transportation, can I ask Dan a question? Yeah. So, and thank you, Dan, and your team. You've no, I shouldn't say hardest. There's so many departments in the school that have hard jobs, but obviously getting our kids to school ties directly to our families being able to get to work. And so lots of the calls that come early and late in the afternoon are from families. So thank you for always picking up your phone and working directly. One thing I also notice is you don't just answer me, you're also looping right in and contacting and trying to troubleshoot with the families. But we're definitely in a better place. But one of the last meetings we've had, we were talking directly about the contract and how much more we'll be spending. And I think the two things that bumped up this year's spending on the buses from last year was, one was the increase in pay, which was necessary for the contract, and the other was an investment in more electric buses. Could you just speak to how much we'll be spending in this year, and if that was true, those two increases is what bumped it up?
Yeah, so the FY25 transportation budget is about $180 million. The FY26 budget is about $188 million. Mm-hmm. That difference is entirely union wages from the new union contracts, which actually will increase more than $8 million. So that's, you know, and then we have some of the efficiencies that we talked about with the ridership and others. Our bus purchases, all of our electric buses are being funded by grants.
Okay.
We've won about $60 million from the federal government over the last few years in grants. So our money from the city for bus purchases has not increased in recent years.
And that one wording in the contract that we had talked about, have we figured that out? And is there a plan to have those extra hours for the drivers who may be less than the 35 to accommodate our athletics and maybe some field trip needs?
Yeah, we're still actively at the table in that and engaged in productive discussions. So feeling very confident there, but also just since you mentioned athletics, would quickly highlight, we had the hearing a month or so ago, and we were happy to share at that time that with some of the changes we've made, we'd had 100% athletics coverage since the start of February. That still holds true, and our goal is to see that through the whole rest of the spring.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. The revolving funds for facilities and maintenance, is it like 2 million that's allocated in the revolving fund?
2 million is the cap on the fund, but we typically don't hit
Need
the
all
cap.
of it? Okay.
We don't use all of it yet.
Back in October of 2024, we did have a hearing where Brian was at, where I called for the hearing because heard from the Condon School whose pool has been shut. And it was a chlorine pump, I think, for like $40,000, right? And this pool is still closed, right? So we've gone through the winter programming and we're in the spring. Do we have a plan to make sure that we're not keeping that, schools?
Yes, we do.
ability,
And just for the record, too, not only for the condo, but the other pools as well, we've been spending the last couple of months establishing the contract with a vendor to perform some of the work. So that's been part of the delays, but Chief Ford can elaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate that, Dr. DePina. We have a contract that was released, I think the last time that we were in the council chambers, we started talking about, especially with Councilor Weber, a maintenance contract that would come out for all of our pools. This maintenance contract is in place now. We've gone through the beginning assessments for each pool to understand exactly what they need. And with that, we're starting to prioritize what that work looks like across the district. Our goal is to make sure that, or to try, except for the 3 pools that do need capital improvements, to try to have these operable by this summer. It may be a little bit longer, and it is an evolving process as we go through it to see what that looks like. The Condon is on the list of those pools that we're hoping to have those improvements completed before the summer.
So when the summer camps and families will know that there'll be a swimming option? We
yes.
know before summer camp registration, which is starting at any moment now?
Yeah, it should be up and running, but with the caveat that if something else occurs that needs to be repaired, we would just need to work on and repair and over-communicate if that were to occur.
And we have bi-weekly meetings with our city partners, including BCYF, where we have not only the weekly update that comes from BPS on the pool status and a memo to our partners, but the bi-weekly in case they have questions around any programming or need to make a pivot on what that looks like for them.
And just a reminder, we've recently taken on this responsibility over the last couple of years, so we really have made leaps and bounds strides in doing a lot of this work in-house and coordinating with BCYF.
Right, and also with Amen and property management taking over, it's been definitely, I think, smoother. It's been a good change.
Right, and we've been working hard to get staffing hired during the day because we share the commitment that we want all students to learn to swim. So that's the other piece in the lift. But I think it's just whether it's our facilities or the pools, having a deliberate process by which we're constantly reviewing and knowing what they need. That's how we have to function in a district like BPS, and we just haven't done that in the past.
In addition to the school-based staff, we've also hired staff in the central office that will work out of Joe Carter's shop, as well as in the facilities department to make sure we support Carolyn Meadows, so she's not just a one-person shop, so there's no single point of failure.
That's good. And a few years ago, when we first, or I started advocating, seeing that so many pools were not open, especially during the summer, there was also a lifeguard issue, which we don't have anymore. So if we can get these small dollar, $25,000, $40,000 at the Draper, if it's the Condon, it would make a world of difference for the communities that really do use those facilities. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Coletta Zapata, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good to see everybody. It's almost like deja vu, which is a good thing. You all have been very accessible in this process. And again, I want to thank the Chair for his work in ensuring that we have multiple conversations before this one. So some of the questions that I have may not be new, and just looking for updates. I want to focus in on unhoused students first. What neighborhoods or schools have the highest concentration of unhoused or housing insecure students, and how are resources allocated accordingly? What are the attrition rates of the students that have been unhoused? And then would love to know the process and supports in place for kids who have experienced an emergency situation like a fire. How it's different than some of the kids being referred by the shelter system, what the immediate supports are in the days and weeks after.
Sure. I can start, and then Brian Marks can come down. Brian Marks, please come to the stage. So in cases of emergencies or fires, we work closely with the City of Office of Emergency Management and the Fire Department, and we're in close contact with them when those things happen live. And they automatically update us on things that are happening, and we research the property address, identify which students are there, and they let us know also. And then immediately we contact the Hearn office and staff, and we start notifying schools of the impact, and Brian's team jumped into action around connecting resources as well. So that's kind of how that process works. But as far as the other piece of information and data, I'll turn it over to Brian, and if not, we'll get you the answers if he doesn't have it available.
Yeah, so Sam summarized it really well. It happens in nearly real time in terms of when there's a fire. Typically, the Red Cross is going to get involved and provide support on site to ensure that if the residence is not habitable, that the family has financial resources as well as shelter in the immediate future. And we work closely to conduct a needs assessment as quickly as possible, and then connect additional resources. Sometimes that might involve enrolling the family in our EHIP program, our Emergency Homelessness Intervention Program, to have ongoing case management support, depending on the circumstances, to help the family get stabilized and ensure that they can find secure permanent housing as quickly as possible. I'll go back as it relates to the percentage of unhoused students per school in terms of the highest schools. I'll go back and put together a listing of that just to ensure that we have the accuracy. But part of what we do in terms of how we allocate resources per school is that we've had a homelessness investment initiative for several years now. So every school will get a per pupil allocation for each student who is identified as experiencing homelessness in the prior school year. And then we also have an additional concentration allocation. So if a school has 5% or more of the student body is experiencing homelessness, they'll get an additional per pupil allocation, and that funding is allocated directly to the school budget. We also provide implementation and procurement support for those schools through our office, the Hearn office, which is the Homeless Education Resource Network, to ensure that schools are able to achieve their programmatic goals as it relates to supporting students and families experiencing homelessness within procurement's guidelines as well as approved vendors.
Okay, thank you. And I had also asked for the attrition rate. Is that something that you have per year for homeless students, that those that leave BPS because, well, we can only assume because they're homeless?
Yeah, so I'll have to go back and do some calculations to come up with that. I'll work with our Office of Data and Accountability. What I can say is that we provide transportation to and from school for, of course, students who are displaced outside of the district. So we try to minimize the extent to which students have an interruption in their education due to homelessness.
Great, thank you. And I
was just going to say, one of the places we did see attrition is in the migrant students that came in at the start of last year. Most of that was just through relocation outside of BPS. So it was not a dropout, but it was attrition.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add that families have choice in the matter as it relates to whether or not they want to continue to attend school in BPS. If they're unfortunately displaced, we can provide transportation, but they also have the right to enroll in the district where they're residing.
Mm-hmm. And I want to thank BPS. There have been many fires in East Boston where we have many kids that are displaced, and you all worked overnight to ensure that there was transportation from a hotel to, I think it was the Elliott School, or it could have been the PJK. So thank you for doing that. That was incredible. I do also just want to highlight that there are 2 kids in one family that got displaced because of a fire. one school community was able to fundraise for them, for one child, and the other one wasn't. And so the disparity was just illuminated in that way. And so as it relates to food security, transportation, and just supports for the family, just keep that in mind as if you're looking at this, because there are different outcomes for kids even in the same family.
And we again, team effort with our city colleagues as well. So it's a team effort around the work and the live coordination.
Thank you. The other question that I have is a simple question about the City of Boston voucher program and the referral system that's up and running now. You may want to stay. I don't know if this is for you, but it has to do with the BHA-administered City of Boston voucher program. It is a closed referral system. So I'm just curious to know how many referrals have been made within the last year, if you have that number.
So unfortunately, we're in a position right now where there are no longer vouchers available. And part of that's a matter of, federal funding that sunsetted in December of 2024. But through that program, we had it up and running for about a 4-year program. We're able to permanently house over 1,700 BPS families, which was a huge accomplishment. I can go back and look at the specific data, but I would say that most of our most recent referrals before we had to unfortunately close down or go into a wait list period, we had probably in the neighborhood of about 300 to 400 in the prior school year. It's a really valuable program. I'm sure colleagues at Boston Housing Authority would agree. And it's something that provides a tangible, permanent housing outcome for families experiencing homelessness. So certainly any opportunities to increase the availability of city-funded housing vouchers. We're working creatively with Boston Housing Authority to look at other ways that we can connect families with public housing units. And we're also working closely with BHA around how we can utilize some of their space and capacity to expand enrichment programming. And we're going to be doing that in collaboration with the voices and perspectives of students and families themselves, as well as the school community, so that we're avoiding the duplication of programming and really helping to collaborate to close any gaps that might be needed.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilor. And just to follow up on Councilor Coletta's one of her questions around unhoused students, can we get a list of the schools that have 5% unhoused students?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Council President Louisiana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the administration for being here again. Thank you to BPS. I have some questions regarding the mergers and the closures. I think it's an important part of the work that we have to do to really make sure that all of our schools are quality schools. Generally speaking, how long is a school in study when we are thinking about renovations to school? How long does it take for a study to complete?
Yeah, so I think, Sarah, do you want to come down and I think this is worth just explaining what that process looks like. Same with MSBA, just briefly.
Thanks for the question. So I'll talk through the MSBA process, and if any colleagues want to add in, I would welcome that. So when a school is submitted, as Madison Park was last week, so that was April, in April, then we'll find out, usually in the winter of the following year, if we can proceed. And then after that, we get invited to what's called an eligibility phase of the project, which is just some due diligence around some basic planning pieces around enrollment, maintenance, et cetera. And so that process begins the following July, and then that process will run through about the entire school year. So we just completed the eligibility phase for the Shaw Taylor. And then we bring on an owner's project manager and OPM into the process, which takes a few months to bring that person on board. And then that kicks off the feasibility study. And then that usually takes about 2-ish years, but it can take a little less or a little more time. And then you can proceed into the construction phase depending on what is decided and found during the feasibility study.
Okay, so on average, from the moment that we decide that we want to renovate a school to the actual renovation, what does that timeline look like?
It can be about 3 to 4 years, depending.
It has to go through a bid for the design, then the design process, then the specs, then there's negotiation around what we're going to ultimately come up with the community, and then there's the actual build. So it depends on what the extent of the renovation is. In a full-blown MSBA one like RBA, we always say it's a 5 to 7 year process.
5 to 7 year process of
from the application on.
Yeah, and to the actual construction.
Correct, till you cut ribbon.
To welcoming students in, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the timeline for the Josiah Quincy?
Oh, that one is unique because it was
decades in the
so many
making.
starts and stops in that one, just in the siting of it.
I would say about like 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think it was at least 5.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was at least 5. But that one was longer just because we had trouble citing it.
That's right.
But I do think just an example. So the PJ Kennedy project, which is a much smaller project.
That's a wing.
That was a wing.
The one in East Boston. That's in East Boston, right? Yeah, we were there for the topping off.
So that project started in 2020. I think the original decision was made in late 2020.
Yeah.
And it was the design firm, I just was involved with the design of that. And we were working with the design firm in 2021, and it's still just about done. So it was basically a 5-year project.
Yeah.
And that was
just for a wing.
Right.
That's a wing.
And my point being, it's not so much that it's the size of the project that necessarily matters, but with the way the procurement law and the design law works for the state, it's just the state law. Each of these phases is very deliberate, requires a longer process, and so 5 years for most capital projects at scale is going to be about as fast as we can get anything done. That's obviously very different than like a repair, right, that's targeted, but just with any size of scale of sort of doing a full design, community engagement, breaking ground.
And all the MSBA steps that are involved with MSBA project, they have their specific timelines.
And also, I love that we are going to the MSBA more. I want us to recoup more money. I think that's an important part of this work. Those are our tax dollars.
Right. Well, the roofs and the windows and the doors and the boilers, same thing. Like, that is a major cost share for us, so it's worth us putting the dollars in because we get it back. But that's like another one where we just weren't taking what was there. And now, under the Brian Ford, we continue to really push this. So every single cycle, which they're now on a biannual, but every single cycle, we're putting like 10, 12 projects through, and we might get 8 of those, but great, we get 8 of those. So because our systems are so old in the buildings.
Right, they are very old.
Very old.
Question as to why Madison Park wasn't put in years ago. And I say this, and I'll repeat it. I'm happy that the Taylor Shaw was put in. That's my alma. I'm happy that the Ruth Batson was put in. That's my alma. But in terms of what the city needs, the Madison Park should have been the first that we put in via MSBA.
Yeah, so when we first looked at Madison, I think the idea was, because it's been so long punted down the road, was to try to get it done quickly and not have it stretched in an MSBA project. It also was coming in the initial estimates in a range of like 500 mil, right? Since the construction has just gone through the roof, that same project is now several $100 million more. And so I think it's just that particular window spoke to, we could get it done quicker. But then we ended up with the siting of it, which is often the problem with these buildings, is getting the suitable site takes longer, and then you get an elongated process. So hindsight's always 20/20. In hindsight, yeah, but I think the good intention was get it done quickly, which would speak to us using the capital dollars to do it. And we thought it would come in it was coming in at a much more reasonable amount.
But are you also stating that every project will be put up to the MSBA for funding?
No,
And
I
then
mean,
if you can explain then what the decision point is, like when you decide to go to MSBA funding and when you don't.
yeah, I mean, smaller elementaries tend to be much more affordable than larger high schools. I think most of our high schools would be, but I think if we're entertaining that, but I think the smaller elementaries sometimes it would be this like the amount we would recoup from MSBA, we would be better to use on a more complex building project that costs more money. So I think, you know, Shaw Taylor is an example where that's going to be a larger school, you know, and so that made sense to put it for our RBA, same thing, because the buildings are in such poor condition. That made sense to do it. So I think the thing with MSBA, they've been very good partners with us, and you know, they are definitely dealing statewide with you know, all of, from an equity standpoint, but we are Boston. We are, you know, a third of the students in the state. And so I'm so happy that we're actually getting really good results of building after building with them. We would love to have 3 buildings in building process with them at all times. May not always work out that way if, you know, the building we put forward doesn't end up being a good fit, but so far, it is. So far, we've been able to ride that one.
Okay. I have additional questions, but I heard my timer, and so I'll reserve them for the second round. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Council, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's great to see you all again. So I'm going to keep my questions in regards to facilities because I think family engagement will be later this afternoon. So I have a list here, I believe, of 60 classroom closures, and I'm just curious if you could give me a dollar amount of like what the financial savings are as it relates to these closures. And while we're looking for that, I'd like to hear kind of what the plan was to help support, like the shuffling around of these students, and what does that look like?
So usually when we recommend classroom closures in consultation with the school leaders, it's around student enrollment. Mm-hmm. So it can be special education shifts, it can be MLE shifts, it can be generally regular ed shifts. We see a lot of it in the 7th and 8th grades, just with the amount of students going on to exam schools. Now that we're a 7-12 configuration district, we see those 7th and 8th grades really drop as you know, students and parents are making choices earlier and earlier. That's really where we see it. Sometimes we just also see it because we see a shift in the area of the city, and we see what was a particular age group, like particularly younger students, coming up. Now all of a sudden there's fewer students.
Yeah, it's $9 million in savings. $9 million. But once again, those were all classrooms with no projected students.
And with regard to supporting the students case by case, we have a mechanism where we develop individual plans for every student that's impacted, that we consult with them, the family, student support teams, to review all their classroom needs and programmatic needs.
Thank you. And can you now give me the same info in regards to the FY26 closures and mergers that are coming down the pipeline? What's the savings on that?
So the FY26 savings from the closures and reconfigurations is $12 million.
And let's just dig in a little bit around some of the questions that, you know, are in the hearts of minds of so many folks here in regards to, and I'm glad that my council colleague asked questions about Madison Park. I'm going to talk a little bit about White Stadium here in terms of facilities. Can you just help me understand from a financial standpoint, kind of like how are we winning with that? How are we going to like think about, God forbid, the league folds? Like, what's our game plan? How are we going to keep up with the maintenance and the care that facility will need? What's the game plan for that?
So we have an arrangement and agreement with the league, not the league, I apologize, with the owners of the team, Boston Legacy. And it spelled out kind of the care and maintenance of the facilities. And we could talk more about that at the capital budget with the city, but that's my understanding. So we have an arrangement that we do carve out the maintenance responsibilities.
Do we have a game plan of a what if? Like, is there, I just want, like, you know how it is. We want to make sure that we're covered. So do we
Yeah,
have that?
we can talk more about that at the capital budget on the 17th.
Okay, great. So just want to put that from the record that I'm going to ask that question. So if y'all can start getting those answers, that would be great. And I asked this yesterday, and we were told that we would have the numbers today. So I'm curious about how many school site council members are English language learners. Is that going to be Anna? Just so you know, that's going to be coming down the pipeline. But from a capacity standpoint, I'm just curious what role, if any, have families played in the discussions around school closures and mergers and things of that nature? What has that process looked like?
Thank you for that question, Councilor Mejia. Thank you for that question, Councilor Mejia. Both with the long-term facilities plan team and the community engagement team, we have been working lockstep with ensuring that we have opportunities for families to give their feedback and also to do community-specific meetings at the school sites, both hybrid, in person and also via Zoom, with appropriate interpretation, so all of our multilingual families are also able to understand and be part of the conversation in a real meaningful way. And the team has a community engagement section within the capital planning department that also works with us and works with the OMME community engagement team. So we have those three teams really working together to ensure that as many voices of our families are really part of the conversation.
Thank you. And I'm curious, there was once upon a time we talked about the racial equity planning tool. Are we still using such a mechanism? So I'm curious, how has that come into play in terms of influencing, school selection and closures, and what examples can you provide? And how has this tool changed, if any, at all, and how are we course correcting?
Sarah, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. It's been a vital tool in the process. And so I think it brings a level of transparency about who's involved, what is the work that they do, what communities are they connected to. It also helps us to make sure that we have a level of accountability around how we are implementing the plan. I think some of the later questions like 5 and 6 talk about what is the plan for ongoing communication, how are we tracking the impact of these closures on students and what their experiences are with these closures, working to ensure that they're fully supported in the process. So we've been working with our Office of Data and Accountability to ensure that we have mechanisms to track that and report that out.
Thank you. And I gave Dr. McIntyre a shout out yesterday in regards to her work in Grove Hall and really that alliance that you created and built an amazing infrastructure for support. And I'm just curious, as we continue to talk about expansions and timelines, I'm curious, how are we looking this year in terms of expanding Hub School, that model across the district?
Oh, great. So we'll introduce Shanette Gray, who's our Exec Director for Hub Schools.
Okay, great. And I cannot believe that my time just came up, because I do have a question about young people who are unhoused, and while they make their way down, I do want to get one more question on the record, and that is, we usually talk about the 5,000 students that are unhoused. I'm curious what that data looks like this year, and I'm curious specifically around students who don't have status, and kind of how are we grappling with that? Okay. But
Good morning. So as far as the expansion process is concerned, a lot of principals and communities want to become a hub school. So this year we are onboarding just one school, which is the Clapp-Winthrop merger, which will be the housed at the Frederick.
Just one?
Just one.
Why? If so many people want it.
I know. I think it's really related to budget. We definitely want to bring more on, but the priorities are the merged schools.
I think it's a combination. I think one is budget, but that is not the driving factor. The team wanted to have an opportunity to recircle around the hub model There's currently, like we felt across the 20 sites, some inconsistencies, and we want to make sure that in rolling a blueprint out, that we're doing it with fidelity. This is an exciting opportunity with the union that we're doing in partnership, and we've been using a model that's a national evidence-based model, but because hub schools started at different times in the BPS, we see some differences across them, and the team just really felt like calibrating that, particularly Dr. Chen, felt like it was good to take a year and actually do that. So they've done a couple of retreats at this point now. My sense is that going forward, they'll be better positioned in FY26, 27 to accelerate it, but they don't want to continue to build on a foundation that they think has wobble in it.
Interesting. Okay, well, thank you for your work in the space, and thank you to Dr. McIntyre for really leading in that space and creating the blueprint and what it looks like to be intentional about seeing our communities as assets, as strong partners.
And Councilor Mejia, how would you like the data that you requested about the homeless? I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure, because every hearing that I've been through, I know when Councilor Asabi George was here, she always talked about the 5,000, and that was a number that kept floating around, and I'm just curious, given the climate that we're in, where we are with that number, if it's still 5,000, do we have less, do we have more?
so Brian Marks can, I think, answer this quickly.
Yeah, that would be
Councilor,
great.
is that okay?
Is that okay?
Fine, yes.
Great.
Thank you. And then the follow-up question is, how are we looking at what's happening on the federal level, and how are we making concessions for that? Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
And you're so amazing. Our office works in partnership with you all the time, so thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Mejia. So last year we identified about 5,200 students experiencing homelessness, which to my knowledge was an all-time high. We did see the number prior to that, the highest count that we had identified was about 4 years ago, and that was about 4,500 students experiencing homelessness. We did see that number come down over subsequent school years, particularly as we were at the height of partnering with Boston Housing Authority to issue vouchers for permanent housing to BPS families. As many folks probably are aware, resources are quite limited right now, including the shelter system being stretched extremely thin. So not only are we seeing a significant increase in the number of students experiencing homelessness, we're also seeing a significant increase in the percentage of those students who are doubled up as opposed to in the shelter system.
In terms of your second question, what I would say is that, and just to be clear on the record, we do not have any information or keep any status of students' immigration. So any student or family that needs support, it's just on the fact that they need support. In which case they would work with their local school team, Brian's office, student support to get that. What we are definitely seeing less of are the immigrant students who are coming into the shelters, which were folded into that surge of the 5,200. We are definitely not seeing that. We are not seeing in our registration as many newcomer students coming. But that is not to say that there are homeless students. Whatever Brian's reporting, you can add on a couple thousand to that likely.
Another follow-up to the follow-up? Yeah. All right. I'm going to give Councilman here another follow-up to the follow-up.
That's right. I'm just curious, because I know we are talking, I like to solve problems, right? So we're going to have some buildings that are going to come online that I'm like, are we thinking about how we utilize some of our buildings to retrofit some housing needs? Is there ever a discussion or anything on the horizon around really being creative in terms of meeting the moment?
So currently, we have not had those conversations, mostly because, to be honest, the empty buildings that we would have had are actually either used as swing space for other projects that are happening. We actually don't have really much in terms of empty building right now. Several years from now, that will change. I think I said earlier, I would love to explore some models that are out there where students who are DYS involved or students who are homeless, you could create like a true wraparound residential for them, but that will take a year or two of planning and funding and partners. But that would be the next level of what I think we should probably look toward.
Yeah, so I'd like to be a part of that. Thank you.
On the top of the list.
Thank you, Councilman Mejia. And I also would like to be a part of that as well, so just add me right under Councilman Mejia. There are 5,200 students that are experiencing homelessness. Do we have some, a lot of our students have siblings inside of the schools? Like, do we know how many families that equates to?
Brian, do you have an individual unit?
I don't off the top of my head, but. You could provide that?
Yeah. I mean, when we find out that one sibling is homeless from disclosure, right, we immediately work with the family to identify any other students that are in BPS.
Right.
Sometimes, frankly, in charter, too, because we transport charter.
Right. Yeah, I guess what I would want is kind of like an understanding of how many of families and, what's the composition of that household. So then I think that will help us as counselors in our advocacy in terms of housing inventory that needs to be built.
That's right.
My other question is around hub schools. I'm trying to get like an understanding of the staff that goes into hub schools and then how it's funded.
Yep.
Right now, I think we have hub school coordinators, a network manager, advisory team. So yeah, so we could just break that down, and then is it the same at every school?
Yeah.
Good morning. So at every school, there is a hub school coordinator. There's not a network manager. So for the 20 schools we have, each of them have a hub school coordinator. And then at the district level, the support is myself, a director, and a citywide coordinator. So there are 3 support staff. And then we partner with lead agencies. The Y and City Year are our lead agencies. And so approximately 11 hub coordinators are BTU members, and the other 9 are hired by lead partners, which are the Y, City Year, and UMass.
Awesome. And then funding?
So right now, the funding is coming directly from the budget of the school, of the district.
It's a part of our general fund budget.
Okay, and there's no outside funding or?
Like, you mean like grants, right?
Grants or philanthropy dollars or even pilot that?
We did have some originally when the expansion was launching, but we've now moved all of the funding onto the general fund. What we do find, though, is that lead partners tend to do supplemental fundraising. So we might have a contract with the YMCA?
The Y, City Year.
Right. We have a contract with these agencies, and our contract with them says we'll pay you this much money to be the lead partner.
Right.
Now, I should probably
Yes, you're absolutely right. And the beauty about the lead partner model is that they bring in additional resources outside of the contracted resource.
Yeah. So I mean, there's varying research on it. It suggests that conservatively, you might see $3 of sort of free resources come into the system for every $1 we spend with a lead partner, between all the other things they're doing, the other partnerships they're bringing in, sort of other services they're providing that they might not be charging us for.
Okay.
Yes.
And that, I mean, that's not a specific number for BPS. We haven't done a study on that. That's more just sort of nationally. I think it could be much higher than that, even better, but for us.
Yep, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then a question for Brian Ford, or not even a question, you have to come up. But I know we did a walkthrough a couple years ago over at the Up Holland, and I just kind of getting an update. I'll send you over the email. If you could just update that email with some timelines on some of those tasks that we laid out. All right, awesome. So I took a look at where our students live, and in the the top neighborhoods on where our student lives, not only with BPS, but student age is Dorchester, Roxbury, East Boston, and Mattapan. We have high schools in Dorchester, Roxbury, East Boston, but not one in Mattapan.
I'm getting deja vu.
Yeah, listen, this is one we've continued to look at. We actually were just having this conversation. I think that we are light both in the Mattapan area and the Hyde Park, West Roxbury area. Part of it with high schools is finding buildings that actually can house a larger high school or a high school of the size where you actually get economy of scale, right, which for us is somewhere around 600 to 700 students. With the kind of space you need for CTE, for early college, for counseling, schools that had been previously built like English, the Holland, Tech Boston, the old Dorchester High School, those buildings cannot house 1,000 kids. Like they can only house like 650, 700 if you add in all of that space. And those are very large buildings. Those are like 200 to 220,000 square foot. We just don't have buildings in the footprints in those areas, so it would be built. And the cost and the siting are somewhat prohibitive right now. But I agree with you that the spine, right, which is what you're talking about, Mattapan, Dorchester, Roxbury, that is really where we need to concentrate, which is why I think we are trying, like MMA, added on that side. Excuse me, we started Body East over in East Boston as a relief valve for East Boston, putting, Holland Tech and building Holland Tech up with the programming there, the Cleveland building, and looking at doing some work there. We're trying to kind of look within that area to figure out how we can build up the opportunities for robust high schools. RBA is another one in that North Dorchester area. But you're right, Mattapan is one that Charles Yancey used to always bring this forward every year, and he wasn't wrong, that we need a high school. But right now we just don't have a building site to really move something to or to be able to build on.
And I know we typically, my understanding is that we are trying not to build over 6 stories, but would that be something that we would consider?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is vertical buildings, most of the comprehensives are 4 to 5 floors. It's just hard to create community when you go vertical in a building as opposed to horizontal or some combination. It's just, you end up with these floors that don't talk to each other. So it's not ideal for us, for sure. And I think, sure, it could be a consideration. Like Quincy Upper is a big building, right? That's got quite a few floors to it, 3 large elevators to it in terms of evacuation plan. But it's not something that would be ideal. I don't think is ideal at the high school level, just because it really does segment the school population.
Our most successful high schools have more than 1,000 students in them. It's the 3 exam schools in East Boston High. I know the long-term facility plan calls for a mix of large and small high schools, but I think we're seeing that these bigger high schools are spending less money and delivering better outcomes. And I know only one of them is open enrollment and is a special case with Eastie, but I think it's compelling evidence for larger high schools. What do you make of that information?
So I think it's hard to compare the non-open enrollment schools to the open enrollment for lots of reasons with the populations. I think that when we look at successful high schools, there's plenty of successful high schools that are in that 600 to 700 range, or even slightly lower than that are able to give the full high quality experience. Certainly, when we look at, whether it's Arts Academy, whether it is Josiah Quincy with the new building, Dearborn, I think when we talk about kind of the high quality experience or the high quality student experience, there's lots that goes into that of what success looks like. Academics is certainly an important lens. Programming is another lens, and the different offerings it has. But it's also the ability for students to explore their interest areas, robust early college, robust career connections, mental health supports and spaces to be able to accommodate that, arts and music. When I think of robust high schools, athletics, it's like, where can you operationalize that culture and give students that full experience where you can build that community? We don't have in our footprint enough buildings that could do that 1,000-kid experience for all those reasons, because when you get outside of the non-exam schools, right, when you get into the non-exam schools and you exclude them, you see district averages with special education in the 30 percentiles. You see MLEs in the 35 or the 40 percentiles. That takes up lots of space to be able to offer specialized programming. So it cuts into the building itself, which means you're just not going to be able to house those 1,000 kids. The inclusion model that we're offering in developing out will help that, because it's actually using more traditional classroom space to be able to educate. But that, again, is a roll-up that will take, out to 28 to be able to get to. I think at that point we sort of assess, where we're at with that. We also know the high school population in general, society's having fewer children, and so what we see is a population that's going down, particularly in city centers. So that's, those high schools are often the big old legacy ones, are ones from decades ago when people had 4, 5, 6 kids in a family. That's not what we're seeing. We are seeing steady enrollment at the high school level. Like for us, the last 3 to 4 years, it's really evened off, and that's very promising to me. We also see an influx of kids come back into the high schools in Boston that I don't think we talk about enough. But will we get back to that point where we need to build big, huge high schools again? I mean, even RBA, we're talking about somewhere around the, 8 to 1,000 point, and it'll probably be closer to the 8 to 9 for them. And they're going to be, the first community hub, university assisted, so lots of space for post-secondary UMass to come in and do work, all designed around program. So I don't think we need the big East Bostons, and I think East Boston does an amazing job. I think it's unique geographically, and it works as a regional solution, like I think Brighton High can. But aside from that, I don't think we need to be thinking about having just, 10 big high schools in Boston. I think we need to have variety. I think we need to have some size variety. Most importantly, we need to make sure that every one of the high schools that remains offers that high quality experience with all the capability of all of those things I just talked about.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll now go back to my council colleagues for second round of questions, starting with Council Braden.
Thank you. I really endorse your opinion that Brighton High School is got huge potential as a regional high school, and be successful like Eastie is because of that sort of landlocked situation that we find ourselves in. I had a couple of questions. I know we've talked, there's a conversation about rebuilding a new community centre at the Jackson Man site, and I know the original intention with the closure of the Jackson Man, the Horace Man is successfully relocated to the Edwards in Charlestown and will probably be there for the foreseeable future, even though it's temporary, but it was temporary in the last place for 40 years, so I've nothing to do with me. And then The idea was that with the closure of the Jackson Man, that they would rebuild a new elementary school. Again, I feel that that's something that's on the long-term aspiration, because there's other more pressing demands. But I think in the shorter term, the community centre is a huge community asset that we will support all of our schools in Alston Brighton, especially if we have this sort of more regional approach. I see it as a great place for, first of all, athletic facilities. We don't have a competition scale basketball court, so they have to go to Madison Park to play a game in a championship, so that's not good. So the priority for, so the Jackson Man Community Centre, I know that because it's sort of controlled by BPS, that's a conversation we have to have. And I think we need to expedite that possibility, because I'm seeing the Jackson Man as, we don't have enough space for after-school programs. We just heard about the hub school with YMCA and the West End House. They provide a lot, but we're still about 600 students short. And so after-school programming for our students is hugely important. And I think the community centre is the only place that we can do it. So I also see it in terms of, all those enrichment programs that our schools can't do in individual schools. But we could have a robotics program, we could have an Alston Brighton school band program, we could have choral, we could have a whole lot of, as well as sports and recreation. So I see that as a huge opportunity, and I'd really love to really push that forward and see if we can get going, because we've been talking about this for a long time, and it's like anything else, it takes time. It'll probably take years to get there, but the sooner we start seriously talking about it, the better we'll get there. That's one question. The other question I had was just about water fountains, and it seems like a little nerdy question, but I was looking at the list, and it seems like the Alston Brighton schools, the Winship has a water fountain upgrade and the Green Academy, but the other schools haven't. And I just love to know where we're at with that in terms of providing safe water for our students. I know at the Gardner, the staff have to carry those huge bottles around, and it's not ideal. That's one school that I know of, but I think they're all in the same position. Water fountains, water, and then the issue around, I don't know, where are we at with bathrooms? Yeah. What's the status of bathrooms in Alston Brighton? I know with the closure of the Mary Lyon Upper School, we're going to be making it into an elementary school, so we'll probably have to put back the little toilets that were there before, so it's like right-sizing bathrooms for the kids, the group of kids that we're going to have, yeah.
Sure. So I'll start with the first question about the Capitol in Jackson, Man, and then Kayla Jackson, our facilities director, will speak to the water and some of the bathroom projects as well. So we'll talk more about the Jackson Man specifically at the 17th hearing with the city. Mm-hmm. But my understanding is that work is moving along, and at the next phase of the project we can work. So we'll be able to speak more to it in more detail with the rest of the team on the 17th. Kayla?
Good afternoon, Councillor. We are actually in the last phase of our water filling station project. It's already gone out to bid, and they will be completed this summer.
Wonderful. So that everybody, all the schools in...
That is the last phase.
And wonderful. And Alston Brighton will be done.
Also, in terms of bathrooms, we have 3 bathroom projects that will be happening this summer. It will be the Trotter, the Guile, and the Kilmer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. And then in terms of just the visioning about the high school, Superintendent, just in terms of scaffolding it out and knowing where we're at, where exactly are we at? Like, I think we have integrated like a middle school program that's, the middle schoolers would like to feel more part of the general, the big population, the big kids. Just where are we at with that whole process?
So I think Brighton High is doing a great job feeding from Edison and Gardner. There's been like a lot of intentionality around that. I think right now it's still a 2-school solution. I think BGA is also still drawing. But I think at Brighton High, there's been an intentionality of driving early college down into the younger grades, which I think is, Principal Bott's vision and the success that they're having getting students into early college and being successful in those courses, tremendous. They have a block schedule that they've been using, and that block schedule is like really enabling them to lift the early college model. Same with the career connections. We're talking about what are the kinds of pathways we can do over at Brighton for students relative to career. That's active conversation that's happening with the secondary office. And I know that they, along with Gardner Edison, are really trying to work around that regional hub so that Brighton High can also be a host to the schools at different points for different activities. They're getting supported with CCE as help. So from my perspective, I think Brighton's doing, is definitely on the rise. I think academically, Principal Bott and the team, we just did a transformation visit over there where we actually had some of the school committee members visiting classes, and they came back extremely excited at the work that they're seeing. So I think that, Brighton is on the rise. I think Principal Bott's leadership is a big reason for that, along with his team. And, we're just intending to support them, particularly with the career connecting activities and the early college as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I feel that sense of like developing a regional approach to Alston Brighton, just like in East Boston, is really critical to sort of strengthening the elementary schools and then feeding that, whether they go off to an exam school, but they have a really strong comprehensive high school to choose if they so wish.
That's right. And I also think that I think Hervé at Lyons has done a great job at Lyons High with making that connection with Principal Bott so that students that are at Lyons High can go over to Brighton and there can be a seamless transition. I think Lyons K-6, we need to fold in the same way that we have the Gardner and the Edison so that students see Brighton High as one of the really valuable offerings for them in that portfolio.
And I think, back to the auditorium, I'm harping on about, but I feel that in terms of just having the community in Alston Brighton see that high school as their high school, like you would have a suburban community would, like, that's our high school, and have abilities to have events and community events and things to bring people into the school and see it as their school and demystify what happens behind the walls, because in the past it hasn't had such a good reputation, and I think we have to try and rebuild that and make people excited about it as a community asset as well as a great high school.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, that we definitely agree with that. And I think just to your point about some of the changes that we've made relative to the science labs investment, their investments in the bathrooms probably are another area of investment that need to be made over there. But the investments in in some of the envelopes for them, the lighting within the gymnasium, the locker rooms. As you know, athletics is really prominent in Brighton. Extremely proud of all of their teams, and that's been a source, I think, of building strong culture within the building.
And Mr. Chair, can I have one more comment?
Yes.
Just the other thing that we're finding with our athletics program is we'd love your help with bridging to the parks department, because the season starts. Cassidy Field, the pitching mound they have to bail it out to play if there's been rain on the. So I think we love that we can use the parks facilities for our school programs, but we need probably some conversation back and forward to say that we need support, we need help to make sure that the pitches and the fields are ready for the start of the season, whatever season it is.
Sure, yeah. Happy to, any feedback you have on any of those facilities related matters, we can definitely connect with the Parks Department.
Cassidy's a tricky one because it's prone to flooding, but
that's right.
It's just had a multi-million-dollar renovation, and it should be better than it is. But I know parks do the best they can, but if we're all going in the same direction, we might get some change.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just want to give a big shout out and just recognize TBA, who's in the building, our Aspen Challenge team. We're looking forward to the presentation on your Aspen Challenge. Looking forward to it at 1. Thank you guys for being here. Councillor Flynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you to the superintendent. Superintendent, I know my colleague, Councilor Santana, mentioned and discussed the Blackstone as well. I was over there this weekend, last weekend with my wife, visiting on Saturday for cleanup. And as you know well, it sits between Villa Victoria and Cathedral Public Housing. So can you tell me specifically the short-term plan and the long-term plan for the future of the Blackstone? But I know long-term, it needs to be completely torn down and rebuilt. I think the residents in the South End and in Roxbury, other parts of the city, deserve a state-of-the-art school as well. But can you give me an idea of where we're at on the Blackstone, short-term and long-term?
Sure. I think Chief Ford can tackle the short term.
Good afternoon, Councilor Flynn.
Hey, Chief.
Thank you. So for the short term is for us to use our facilities condition assessment. It helped us outline everything that in the building that may need some work right now, and it helps us to start putting together different projects with our facilities team and other teams within that department that let us make the improvements, whether that's the lighting, the ongoing alterations and repairs to the building, such as the carpentry and some of that masonry work. I won't be able to name all the topics off the top of my head, but it does cover kind of everything that's in the day-to-day and making sure we don't have to go out of way for that additional funding with the capital expenditure, but it is included in our facilities maintenance budget for those items that are there.
And I would just add to that, we'll continue to work with the school leaders and the teachers at the school around their specific needs, around their specific spaces, and accommodate as best we can, and obviously tackle any health or safety related emergencies as well.
Yeah, thank you. I know they have a brand new school leader, principal, is doing an outstanding job. Came from the Murphy, and Courtney's off to a very good start. So I wanted to say thank you to her and the teachers there. But I guess my question is, as I advocate for a state-of-the-art Blackstone school, during that period of time, how are we providing a sound learning and healthy environment for students during this period of time? Maybe it's several years, I don't know. But in the meantime, they still don't have a swimming pool. That's not going to work. But they have a library that is not all that useful at the top of the stairs there. But how do we factor in those challenges and other infrastructure challenges while we advocate for a state-of-the-art Blackstone school?
Right. So we'll work with, and I agree with you on Principal Shepak. She's doing an amazing job. We'll continue to work with her and the staff to identify areas in the building that we can do some amount of work or repair to be able to address issues. I think we worked with them on some of the classroom modular space that's in their 5th, 6th grade, putting up some temporary kinds of wall petitions with some sound material as an example of something that they were asking for. I think, one of the things with the pool, because I agree with you on the pool, and I think we've had this conversation, right? Young people getting access to the water sports and being able to learn to swim. Taking the step of actually being able to understand what it's going to need, I think is a big step. And hopefully in that process, we can figure out, is there something temporary that's to be done to it while we think about a next step with whether it's capital planning or it's our budget to be able to get them the building that they need. What would those steps look like? But that has to start with us doing that full evaluation. So I think that is going to be a conversation point going forward. I think the other thing is Brian and the team often meet with the principals just to be able to talk about for the following year or over the summer, what are the kinds of projects that could be done. The ramp was a good example last summer going into the summer school because they house a fairly large summer school program where we were able to get that done fairly quickly. So we'll continue to work with Courtney to identify what those are, especially now that she's in there and she can see with her eyes what's necessary, and certainly that represents the staff as well.
Thank you. But there has been money allocated in the budget, in the capital budget for the Blackstone. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's a dollar line in there that's a placeholder, and that is really for design work that we would try to do for them, really to understand like what might be possible, what their needs are for the building. I think the issue with MSBA right now is that we have the 3 projects, the Shaw Taylor RBA coming in, and then we just submitted Madison. I think we'll have to wait the year to sort of see with Madison what's going to happen, to then know what might be or not be relative to MSBA going forward. But Blackstone is, for us, on a priority list. Like, we see that school, we see the number of students it's serving, where it lies in the community and what it means. So we share the sense of urgency and priority with you.
And the capital line in the budget for the Blackstone is a symbol to the administration's commitment to that school.
Sam, what is the figure that's in the budget for the Blackstone? Can you tell me?
Give me a second. We can pull it up.
I think it's 20 million.
That sounds right.
So that's basically a placeholder.
It is.
Yes.
But in the meantime, are we moving forward on moving the ball to the next level, moving to the next level, so we can get more towards the design and construction phase?
We're going to continually assess that in the grand scheme of our bigger, larger plans, given the finite dollars that are available in the capital budget. But our goal is to continue to watch, monitor, and plan, and take a holistic view of the city as we do it.
Right. I mean, I think because it's a 5-year capital plan, Councilor, like putting that placeholder in there so we can move on it with design if that opportunity avails itself. If we didn't have it in there, we wouldn't have that opportunity. So I think it says, 1, we know it's priority. We want to be able to move on it. 2, if that opportunity presents itself over the course of the next couple of years, we will move.
Okay, thank you. And my final question, Superintendent, maybe you don't have to give me any answer now, or Sam, but maybe over the next week. Could you, I've been trying to get the Blackstone School access to swimming lessons, the kids' access to swimming lessons, and just want to see what the status of that request is, and especially going forward this summer and into the fall. Are we able to develop a working partnership with whether it's Josiah Quincy or any school in and around the area, so the kids from the Blackstone can also have access to swimming lessons? And I also know that there's a lot of students at the Blackstone that are in wheelchairs also.
That's right.
But getting them access to a little bit of swimming would be great.
Correct. And especially with the Carter opening, that will be a one that we can do fairly seamlessly. But we will follow up on this, Councilor. It's an important point.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me an extra minute.
Thank you. Around mergers and closures, when we close a school, can you get into the specifics on how that works in regards to school staff, teachers, and administrative staff? What, if any, commitments are we making to our school staff?
Yeah, so I think it varies a little bit in each individual case. In some cases, sort of a true merger, the process looks very similar to if the schools have been one school before, so every teacher has rights, every staff member has rights to the new building, and then if there are any adjustments, they're made in accordance with whatever the union rules are for that building. I think in a world of a closure, obviously it's a little bit more complicated. There we try and make sure that we are offering supports to all the impacted staff, helping them understand opportunities throughout the district. In a lot of ways, we are fortunate to have many openings that our staff can move into, and so we have not been in a place where we've had to do sort of formal layoffs, and we've had jobs available for every staff member who's interested in one. That's not to say that some staff don't choose to then leave the district. Obviously, some do. It's their choice. But we want to make sure that we're trying to retain as many of our wonderful staff members as possible.
Yeah, we're big enough from an economy of scale as a district that we generally, from people moving, retiring, life transition, we have openings. So we always love when staff who are with us and have a history of teaching in BPS apply for positions. Frances Canty, Chief Canty, actually goes to the schools that are closing with her team, and they offer almost like a human resource fair to be able to support, show what's open, keep line of communication open, just much like we do with the students, where we want to make sure they get settled into high quality seats. We want staff to do the same. You know, one of the earlier public commenters just raised the concern about with the Dever staff going with students. We always try to accommodate that. Like if we see, in the case of the Dever, there is a fairly large walk zone of kids that live near the Frederick. And so what we'll likely do is make sure that as the Winthrop and the Clap leaders are interviewing because they're going to be a bigger school and there'll be extra seats in there, both that the students that live near Frederick from the Dever get priority to go there, but then also for the staff, that any open positions there, that they get considered so that students that came from the Dever see them and know them.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add to that is that we also work with all of our unions as relates to the mergers and closures as well, really closely. So not only just BTU, but all the unions that we have that are impacted by it.
That's good. Yeah, and I could see how in that transition, having a familiar face with your teacher or your gym teacher could help the students transition.
That's right.
I know the MSBA process is moving forward in some of our schools, but it could take, it sounded like 4 to even 7 years. How do we keep the community informed and engaged during such a long process? Is there like a community engagement plan? And I'm thinking about the Shaw Taylor community because they were wondering if the process had stalled out, and we heard that wasn't the case, but just want to make sure that there is an engagement plan on how long these processes can be.
Thank you so much for that question, Councilor Worrell. I actually pulled up some stats that may be helpful when we think about how we are engaging families in this process. From January to now, we've had over at least 133 community meetings, which is pretty impressive, along with the long-term facilities folks, meaning capital planning team and the community engagement team as well. And all of the, at least at a minimum, especially virtual meetings of impacted schools and in-person meetings of impacted school and communities for both closures and mergers, we have had at least 115 participants at 5 different events. So it's an approximation, but we always have at least 100 participants. And from now until the end of the school year, we still have a handful of more community engagement opportunities that we are specifically focusing on the schools that are mostly impacted.
Awesome. Yeah, and I guess I'm just advocating for it, and it sounds like you guys have it planned out, is that, you know, during that process, just constant check-in, whether it's quarterly, every 6 months, just kind of setting some sort of cadence.
I would say one of the benefits that we have as far as having a connection to the school community on the ground is our family liaisons. So our team is really set up to support the regional model, and each one of the regions has what we call a family engagement facilitator, which is someone that supports the family liaisons across their region. So as you can imagine, we have impacted schools across several regions that are able to be updated and connected with information that's going to impact families. And I see that Sarah came down as well to give even further information, but the family liaisons are really key when families have questions or they're concerned or anything having to do with their student or what they should do next. The family liaison and the welcome services team, they work hand in hand to make sure families understand what are their options and what can they do.
Got it. So,
And then I want to pass it,
Yeah.
unless you have a question for me.
oh, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Sarah.
I'll just be brief to supplement what Dr. Tavares was saying about the Shaw Taylor in particular. So I can look up when the community meetings are going to be, but I know that before the end of this school year, our senior project manager on capital planning in partnership with the family liaison and other school staff plan to hold more spaces to ensure that families, students, staff understand what the timeline is. It's a complex, somewhat bureaucratic process, the MSBA. They've been amazing partners and they are really transparent about the process, which helps us then to be able to translate that information for our families so that they know two things. One, what's the timeline? And two, how can they influence the process, which they can do through the design. So that's the focus for just communications and engagement with Shaw Taylor on the MSBA project.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And Councilor Worrell, I also have Chief Sanchez here, and she does the work most directly with the family liaisons to also respond.
Good afternoon, Councilor. Thank you so much. I think that Dr. Tavares and my colleague Sarah actually, quite frankly, have covered it. One of the things that I will add is that we have consistent professional development for our family liaisons, where we build their knowledge and their support in order to ensure that they are providing personalized attention to each of the schools that are in this situation. And in addition, one last thing I will add to, as part of our welcome services, is that we also ensure that personalized attention is provided to families that are impacted by the long-term facilities plan. One example is how we're working with the Excel School. We actually are ensuring that we're providing them opportunity to learn more about what is available for them in terms of our high-quality seating in some of the schools, and providing them with a sort of high school fare that is personalized for all of their needs within grades and by programmatic experiences.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess this question is for Dan. Can you provide us with an update on how improvements to BPS bus schedules and transportation for student athletes is going? And then also, is the $188 million correct? Is that the total number for our BPS transportation budget?
Yeah, so I'll take that second question first, and thank you, Councilor Worrell. $188 million is the total FY26 budget allocation for BPS transportation. So that includes not just yellow bus transportation, but also MBTA passes, bus monitors, and the private transportation for students who are displaced due to homelessness or being in foster care. And then to your first question about athletics transportation, so as you may recall from the hearing not too long ago, we had at the end of the fall worked very closely with the athletics and student support teams to make a number of different changes to how we schedule and operate athletics transportation, and those had included kind of more collaboration on the scheduling to make sure that games and trips did not overlap with peak home-to-school transportation times, and to, where possible, kind of spread games out across days. Had also looked at, we had fully transitioned athletics transportation into Zoom to improve both the communications and operations there. And then we've been working to put in place both backup outside transportation vendors and finalize that work as directed language for next year, to just provide additional coverage options. So all of that work is continuing, and I think when I was last here, I had shared that since making those changes, we had 100% coverage on athletics transportation since the start of February. Here we are a month or two later, that continues to be true. So since we've made these changes, we have not had any uncovered athletics buses, and very optimistic and expect that we'll continue to see that going forward.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your dedication, and thank you to your entire team over there at the Bowling Building. And this is just some data that could be presented when you're providing the unhoused students information. It's just a breakdown of how many students are with families, and then how many students are without families.
That's great.
And if we could, yeah. Then my last question is for Brian Ford. I'm an advocate for the TBA parking lot. We need some signs and just some fixes and improvements to that parking lot. I wonder if you could go out there and put some eyes on it and provide some improvements to that parking lot.
I will second that request.
Well, I am happy to announce that we have already done the majority of this work.
Oh,
as
nice.
it's happened. We have signage. I can send photos as receipts. So a lot of this work is done.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for that. Again, I want to invite everyone here to come and see Hodan, Nakia, Aaron, Angelina, Michaela, Sanaya, Laurel, Brian, and Coach Bruce and Joe at 1 o'clock in the Curly. We do have pizza, and they have a great presentation, so please join us in the Curly room. And just want to check with Karishma on. No?
I think Councilor Zapata is.
Oh, sorry. I was about to gavel out. All right, I'd like to go to Councilor Coletta Zapata.
Thank you so much, and I apologize. This will be quick. And you don't even, I mean, maybe you do have a response. 189 Paris Street. What's going on?
My understanding is that we're in the design phase of the actual curb cut and getting things going, so it's in progress. Thanks again for all your advocacy around that. So we're working with getting it designed and then built out, if I remember correctly. But Chief Ford, if I'm mistaken, please let me know.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. DePina. You are exactly correct. We have it with the House Doctor right now. We're waiting on final stamp drawings from an engineer to make sure we can move forward with that. After that, we'll move forward with a community process so they know everything that is happening as it relates to that. We'll make sure to reach out to your office so that you are included in there as well. We're hoping to plenty of parking spots for the staff in the evenings also for parking for the community members. And maybe we'll be able to get some transportation in there as well. And so we are able to have a little bit better coverage in East Boston as it relates to our student transportation.
That would be great. And is the desire, the plan still to have it be a school?
So our previous
School building?
request for this site didn't work out for it to be a school, and as of right now, the only plan we have is for the curb cut, the parking situation that we have there.
Okay. When did we acquire this property?
It's been a few years now. It's been about 3-4 years maybe. Yeah, we could double check and get the exact date.
Okay. And was the original plan for it to be an expansion of the Otis?
It was. We wanted to secure it for a potential site for something. At one point, we were talking about standing up like a program or school out there, and then we talked about expansion for the Otis as another option. So there were many options being considered, but we didn't nail down one. We figured if we secured the lot itself, we can give ourselves some options, but we didn't nail down a specific final plan for it. So in the meantime, it's been sitting, and thankfully for your office and some of the schools in the area, they expressed the need for parking in that area. We also use it for, there's a program there that escapes me right now that's also using part of the land as well. So we're just going to accommodate the staff as much as we can in the meantime. Okay. And the community for that matter, because these community benefit for the parking as well.
Are we going to need the building? Or are we going to need that land for, I mean, like, I guess on the horizon, maybe for the superintendent, our district, I mean, we are very lucky. Our district is not seeing enrollment declines and no mergers or closures. That was always supposed to be another location for an expansion of a school. So this is a change. This is news to me. So if you can just expand on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this might have been purchased prior to me, but I think it's the kind of thing where if there is enrollment increase, to be able to have a parcel that we can evaluate for build or for rebuild is wise. So I wouldn't suggest us letting it go right now. I would say a temporary use of it and then to be determined. Because I think to your point, like right now the numbers are okay, but if the numbers go up, there's really no place to add on to with the building. So I think holding on to the parcel would be important.
Okay, thank you. And And I do just want to shout out the students who are here. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Actually, my now East Boston liaison was a senior and class president at East Boston High School and came to testify against budget cuts. This was 2019. So just keep doing what you're doing and stay involved and stay active and fighting for your community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
The chair recognizes Councilman here. Council, you have the floor.
Thank you. Right on time. Hello, everybody. All right, so I'm just really curious because I was told that I only have like 3 minutes, which is really 10 in my world. I'm curious if you could just talk to us a little bit about the impact. How does BPS assess whether ongoing construction work affects instructional time, staff retention, and student attendance? I'm just curious about how we reconcile with that. And I'm also interested in learning how BPS and whether or not you have conducted a student-centered impact assessment across all phases of facilities planning. For example, how do renovations intersect with priorities like inclusion, multilingual, and things of that nature? So it would just be helpful to understand.
Yeah, so I think in general, we don't like to work on buildings when students when students are in them for all the reasons you're talking about. Noise, excuse me, noise, dust, right? Environmental, excuse me, shuffling kids around. Sometimes there is necessity, particularly if you have a situation which it's a safety issue or a project runs over what we intended, but we're constantly reviewing the timelines. I think the Sumner building is like a great example where, you know, that ran over. PJK is one that we've had our eyes on to make sure that punch list gets complete, Josiah Quincy Upper. So we do our best to try to finish what we can, but there are just sometimes construction delays happen.
Yeah.
Sarah, anything else?
No, that's good. Thank you, Sarah, for being on standby. I do have another question, though, so you might get that one. You know, back in the day, we were talking about transferring the O'Brien to West Roxbury, that complex, and, you know, we organized and worked alongside parents and whatever. That did not happen. But what is happening with West Roxbury and kind of like, you know, what are we doing with that space and what's the game plan for that? And then I have a question about transportation. You know, everybody's been talking about the Zoom app. And I'm just curious if you could just let us know how much the app will cost this year to use and what has been the return on those investments.
Great. So right now with West Roxbury, it's just a placeholder. There's nothing active, no active plan for it. It's a complete redesign of that building for any kind of future use. And our capital dollars right now are for the next 5 years allocated to projects that are already on the table. So there's a placeholder in the budget. It's still our building, but there's no plan for it. In terms of,
are we losing money because of that? I mean, like,
are we
losing money? I'm just trying to think creatively, like if we are looking for opportunities, but we have a complex that's huge in terms of just really planning, why allow that humongous site to just continue to be there dormant?
Right. So I think, you know, we still have electricity in it, and those things it's used for storage and things like that, but it's not, I mean, it was a projection of a $350 million to get it into
Madison Park. Madison Park was projected at $700 million. So I'm just trying to think. I'm going back to Madison Park.
You mean to like move Madison Park to West Roxbury?
No, I was just thinking, you just mentioned that it would cost $350 million to renovate West Roxbury, but it will cost $700 million to renovate Madison Park. There's some money here, but I'm not going to keep going back and harping on White Stadium, but we're spending $100 million on White Stadium, and I think that's what people get frustrated in terms of like how we're doling out money if we have an empty building and we have a need, and I'm just trying to figure out kind of like reconciling with that. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, so we haven't identified, beyond the proposal that had gone in for O'Brien, we haven't identified another specific need for a building that size in that area. I think the immediate need is Madison, and that's really why we're prioritizing the capital dollars we have, and almost all of them, toward that building, hopefully with MSBA, but if not with MSBA, then still a commitment to make sure that that building happens. So our capital budget can't afford at this point more than that with Shaw Taylor, RBA, and the schools that are already like slated. So we have a placeholder to say maybe sometime in the future there could be a use for that building, there could be a community design, but we don't have the money in the next 5 years to contemplate that. And then transportation, Dan?
Yeah, Dan's ready.
Yep. Councilor, you'd asked about the price of the Zoom app. So it's a 3-year contract. It was $1.3 million in year 1, which included all of the hardware and implementation. And then it's $548,000 a year ongoing. But I would just note that our prior software and everything was about $300,000 a year, so it's not all new spend.
And the return on investment, like we mentioned earlier, we've already identified about $1 million worth of savings by non-ridership as of now. And then as we go through the years, we may yield more savings as well.
Yeah, that's great. My buzzer went off, so you're lucky. I don't get to ask you any more questions. Thank you.
Dan, I do have one question for you. And I'm thinking about the Council Pepin's advocacy on the cameras on buses. Are we working with, because we do transport students outside of Boston and also students coming into Boston. Are we working and collaborating with outside towns on what programs or service they're using for the camera system?
Yep, that's a great question, Councilor. So at this point in time, we've been working internally with Boston Transportation Department and Boston Police Department to think about how this would look in Boston. But you're right, we'll need to eventually also think about surrounding towns as well.
Awesome. And then, thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
And then my last question, and this could be provided in a memo or just looking for a report on new arrivals at the secondary level, numbers incoming, numbers of the new arrivals that are in college prep, any mental health services, trauma-informed care for our new arrivals.
Absolutely.
Just kind of getting an idea around that.
We can provide that for you.
All right. Again, thank you guys. Thank you to Central staff. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to the panel. A reminder to join us this afternoon at the next hearing on the FY26 BPS budget, where we will focus on before school and after school programs. And this hearing on docket number 0822 through 0830 and 0831 through 0832 is adjourned.